Hi, beautiful people. Hope that you had an amazing day. Pete Hegseth and Caine returned to Capitol Hill. I'm going to watch that with you. And you guys, I got a gift. Somebody very special sent me a mug. You guys know I love mugs. Thank you so much. Zero Boo. Thank you. I love it. Wait, you want to see it? This is like the best gift ever. You guys know what to get for me. So I have my collagen water in here. And I just feel really, really special. Thank you so much. Let me get into the video as I try out my new Trump cup. Okay. Let me set it up for you. I haven't seen this one yet in full. So did you see my cup called? Switch to again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, let me get into this video because it's kind of long. And your girl got to go to work in the morning. You like it? Zero sent it to me, so you can thank her. I am so happy.
To come to order. Secretary Hegseh, General Caine, welcome. Look forward to discussing the President's budget.
Yeah.
And we appreciate the opportunity to do that today. Obviously, we had very good attendance. Today, the need for significant defense investments is as urgent and obvious as it is overdue. Quantity has a quality of its own, and the sheer scale of our defense commitments sends a powerful signal. But what goes under the top line also matters. The way this budget request is structured matters. This is not a $1.5 trillion defense appropriation request. It's a request for $1.1 trillion in base appropriations.
Know that you see my cup.
And regretfully, another $350 billion in reconciliation. The good news is the base request reflects real growth, unlike the net cut in fiscal year 26 request, and very much unlike the Biden level CR in 25. But some of the most pressing items on the fiscal 27 to-do list are regularly downstream of missed opportunities in fiscal 26. For example, like the failure to fully fund $28 billion in multi-year contracts for critical munitions. The subcommittee did what we could to increase munition purchases above the fiscal 26 request level,
You think I am?
but we couldn't do it all without a sufficient top line. This year, the fiscal 27 request sets a higher top line, high enough, one would think, to build the department's highest priorities into the base budget request, instead of shunning them off into a one-time reconciliation request. Which brings me to the bad news. The 27 request fails to make room in the base budget for some of the military's top priorities. The distinction between base and reconciliation really matters. Base funding is what creates budget stability for the services and sends consistent demand signals to industry. And base funding is what gets extended by short-term continuing resolutions when work on a full-year appropriations is unfinished. As I said last year, reconciliation should be a supplement to, not a substitute for, political realities will not always allow for party line budget reconciliation.
Claude.
And if the department's top priorities aren't built into annual appropriations, we're actually taking a big risk. Missions and the F-35 program and drone dominance, top priorities. But these key lines of effort only work if we put them on solid fiscal footing. So, why is the department requesting funding for multi-year munitions contracts, which by definition require steady year-on-year funding via a one-time reconciliation? And why risk some of the president's top priorities like Golden Dome by not firmly building them into the department's baseline? National missile defense will require sustained funding over many years, not a one-year expenditure. Other key platforms like the second destroyer and the E-7 battle management aircraft aren't requested in base or reconciliation. So, Mr. Secretary, you've been outspoken about the pace of America's armed forces as the most, quote, powerful, most lethal, and most prepared military on the planet. I'm as committed as you are to sustaining that role. But that's precisely why I'm confused by the administration's failure to prioritize key systems in the year-on-year base budget spending. So I hope you'll explain the department's current approach to allies and partners. The stunning success of Operation Midnight Hammer and Operation Epic Fury illustrates the importance of the access, basing, and overflight granted by our allies in Europe and in the Gulf. I'm as frustrated as anybody about Spain, but they are the exception to the rule when it comes to European allies carrying more of the burden. Likewise, it's impossible to conceive of U.S. power projection in Indo-Pac without the breach that comes from decades-old alliance relationships. So I want to hear the department's view of the role of longtime allies in support of U.S. interests across the globe, because it's quite clear now that our expectation for European allies is no longer the focus of our own continent message that they received from your subordinates for most of the year. Our adversaries are working together to undermine America in the West, strained relations with our partners who are making generational commitments to collective defense and driving investment into American-made weapons and systems only serves our adversaries' interests and limits our capacity and deterrent power globally. So I want to hear about the future of capacity building with committed allies and partners. From the Baltic states to Taiwan and the Philippines, I expect the European capacity building investments intended specifically for Ukraine reach their destination without further delay. Wars in Ukraine and the Middle East clearly show that we have things to learn from our friends. If we want drone dominance, it makes perfect sense to deepen cooperation with the world's most drone warfare experts. I want to underscore this is not charity. When our partners are capable, deterrence is stronger, and the risk to our own service members is lower. This is true in the Middle East today as it was in Europe and the Indo-Pacific. And I think it's noteworthy that our allies in the Pacific have an interest in Ukraine, have sent representatives to NATO meetings. They're hoping for and expecting that NATO will play a worldwide role in defending democratic countries against these adversaries that we're all challenged by. Our allies and partners have many of the interests, and if we fail to take full advantage of it, we're only hurting ourselves. I'll end with one observation on the prospect of supplemental appropriations. The deficiencies of our munitions, critical munitions stocks, and industrial capacity actually existed long before the conflict with Iran and Russia's escalation in Ukraine. If the administration sends Congress a supplemental appropriation request, it'll be an important step toward fixing a long-standing problem and investing in future deterrence. It shouldn't be a referendum on the war in Iran. I supported a national security supplemental in 2004, even though I thought President Biden's approach to Russia and Iran was too weak. I did it not because supporting Ukraine is in our strategic interest, but because these funds helped replenish American stockpiles and restore our own defense industrial base. And in fact, jobs were created in 38 different states in this country, in our country, American jobs, by a significant percentage of what that went for. Today, the need to expand munitions production and replace battlefield losses is actually even more urgent. So with that, I'll ask each of our witnesses, after we hear from Senator Coons, to make an opening statement and hopefully limit your remarks to 5 minutes. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Hegseth, General Caine, Chairman Caine, for appearing before us and for your testimony today. Let me just begin by expressing my gratitude to the service and sacrifice of the 2.8 million members of the Joint Force and the civilians who support them. And in this urgent moment, to focus on a few simple and clear questions. It bears repeating that the regime in Iran is a terrible regime that has the blood of thousands of American soldiers on their hands over decades, and that they pose a sustained and real threat to the United States and the region. And it bears repeating that our allies are increasingly distanced from us as our adversaries are increasingly aligned. I agree with much of what the chairman said, including that we are in a moment of real contest and danger in no small part because Russia, China, DPRK, and Iran are partnering. Russia and China are helping resupply Iran and the drones that they're using to contest and close the Strait of Hormuz, to target and kill Americans and degrade our facilities. And so if our adversaries are increasingly aligned, I think a core question is, are we? We have so many questions, Mr. Secretary, about this budget proposal, this $1.5 trillion budget request. And at the core is going to be, what's the cost of the war we're in Iran? How long will it go? What damage has been done to our security and our strategic position? When will we get a supplemental request, and of what scale? When will we be requested to authorize this war? And when will the American people get a clear answer about our strategic goals and how we will achieve them? I share the chairman's concern that we have created real distance with our allies, most principally our NATO allies, who have stepped up and contributed tens of billions of dollars more to purchase the munitions for the defense of Ukraine and to dramatically increase their long overdue investments in our joint defense in Europe. But unfortunately, the way that the move towards war was launched 74 days ago, without consent, without consultation, has caused a real rift with our vital European allies. And again, as the chairman said, and I agree, there is also a critical and urgent need for us to recognize and embrace that in the most important test field, the battlefield in Ukraine, where the Ukrainians are fighting bravely and successfully against Russian aggression, they have innovated. They have delivered the most lethal and capable drone and counter-drone technologies in the world. What is bedeviling us in Iran right now? Their ability to use thousands of cheap, effective Shahed drones to hit our allies, their military facilities, and their oil and gas production facilities, and to target and hit civilian shipping. Who's the world's best at intercepting Shahed drones? Ukraine. Last year, the administration requested 0 for Ukraine and zero for our key NATO allies in the Baltic states. And on a bipartisan basis, this committee put in $400 million. When we met just about a month ago for the first time over at the Pentagon, and thank you for that conversation, we all emphasized the importance of coming to us with a spend plan for these $400 million. This is a $1.5 trillion request in front of us. Why am I taking your time on $400 million? Because I think it shows a key piece, a missing piece in strategic vision. We should not be standing aside from the war in Ukraine and saying, eventually we want to be a part of some peace between Russia and Ukraine. We should be learning the lessons of Ukraine. Our allies in the Persian Gulf they're buying their interceptor systems at scale. Some of our current and former leaders in our military were working very hard to learn the lessons of Ukraine. I must say, in a recent briefing for this subcommittee, I was very encouraged by two very senior members of the United States Army who are in Ukraine and have been helping our armed forces learn. But my heart fell when I left and was told that those two senior officers were being forced out. I am concerned that we have a distracted administration and a distracted department. From your written testimony, Mr. Secretary, it seems at times you're more passionate about fighting culture wars than winning the real war that we're in. At banning books, at cleaning alleged DEI off of websites, at taking on an anti-vaccine position rather than continuing the long-standing public health policies, at interfering with promotions. I'm stunned that you fired the 44-year Chief of Staff of the Army in the middle of a hot war and dismissed the Secretary of the Navy in the middle of a naval blockade. As dozens of senior flag rank officers have been dismissed, I am worried about what that does to focus and morale. We have a president who seems more focused on a $1 billion ballroom and a victory arch rather than achieving actual victory, and a small piece of the $1.5 trillion request in front of us is for a new Trump class of battleships, a so-called Golden Fleet, which I think goes in the wrong direction. Let me come back to the basic point I was trying to make. The world of warfare is changing. Every major service can and should embrace smaller, lighter, faster, more distributed, lethal capabilities that will mostly be autonomous.
Aww.
This move towards a Golden Fleet, towards a new battleship, strikes me as moving in exactly the wrong direction, giving our adversaries a bigger target rather than a more capable platform. How do I explain to my constituents the cost of this war and the cost that we are looking together to invest in our national defense? I share the chairman's concerns about reconciliation. Last year, $150 billion was provided to the department, but the mismatch between base year and 1 year, between long-term and short-term, caused tens of billions of dollars in errors. Errors in how shipbuilding was handled, errors in how new munitions are being acquired. And working together on a bipartisan basis, we fixed many of those problems. This year's budget proposal triples that request to $350 billion. I agree with you about the urgency of our national defense. In your written testimony, you lay out 4 key goals: defend the homeland, deter China, increase burden sharing with our allies and partners, and supercharge the defense industrial base. As you've seen in the last Congress, I've worked with you and with Deputy Secretary Feinberg on multi-year munitions. I cheer the goal of finally passing an audit in 2028. I think we have critical investments to make in our defense industrial base. I think we are absolutely in the fight of our lives as a republic to win space and surveillance and the capacity to fight drones and launch drones. But I'm concerned that you, sir, and this department is distracted by issues that are not focused on the core thing we need to achieve. I could not agree more with what you said in your written testimony. For a generation, the United States was largely distracted by open-ended wars of regime change and nation building. And as you summarize this administration's approach, we will not send America's best to advance foolhardy or reckless adventures halfway around the world. Mr. Secretary, I agree that the Iranian regime is a terrible regime. I'm grateful for the service and the sacrifice of the Americans who've been wounded or who've lost their lives in this current conflict. But I do not understand the strategy. And as the average American is seeing the costs at the pump and at the grocery store, and as this committee is being asked to approve the largest single-year increase in defense spending in decades, I need to better understand the answers to the urgent questions I've put before you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Chairman McConnell,
Just have plenty of questions. Go ahead.
okay, sir. I'll try to keep it short. Ranking Member Coons, other members of this committee, thank you for being here. I'm honored to be here alongside the Honorable Pete Hegseth and the Honorable Jay Hurst to talk about this year's President's budget. I'm grateful for the opportunity today to speak with you about the foundation of America. Members of our joint force. And I'm continually inspired by the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, Guardians, and civilians standing the watch. They all could choose to do something different, but they choose to come serve our nation and do something more important than themselves. I would also like to highlight the 40 members of the joint force who've passed on from operations, combat, and training during my time as chairman, to include the 14 members who passed and were killed in action in Operation Epic Fury, and also highlight our most recent loss, First Lieutenant Key from Africa, who was out there, TDY. As chairman, my duties to ensure civilian leadership has a comprehensive range of military options and the associated risks required to make our nation's most difficult and complex decisions. I owe the President, the Secretary, and you, the Congress, the truth at every turn, and my blueprint for this role has always been General George C. Marshall. His firm commitment to civilian control, to a nonpartisan military, remains my constant standard. I strive to follow his example by working with you and providing clear and candid, strictly nonpartisan military advice, and to present this committee and my civilian leadership the clearest possible assessment of risk, readiness, and executability, and mindful today of the unclassified environment that we're in here. We are, as you said, Chairman and Ranking Member, operating in a delicate and dangerous times. Global risk is scaling, and the complexity of the modern battlefield demands constant adaptation and innovation. Your joint force is operational at its core, purpose-built for the realities of a complex world. We're organized, trained, and equipped to execute the most demanding missions across the globe with unrivaled precision, as demonstrated by the actions and activities over this past year. We are the most professional military on earth, and we're able to do these things because of the deep, enduring reservoir of training, professionalism, and commitment. Our operational tempo is high, but we're designed to sustain it and rebuild quickly, but we need to rebuild faster. We build readiness every day, we train professionals every day, and we learn to sharpen our edge every day. And we build continually on emerging technologies, as the ranking member said, like AI, quantum, and others, and advance every day, led by great people in our joint force, like Commander Gary Wald, or Wald, G, as we call him, who's out there working every day on our joint staff. Driving this pace of change requires timely, predictable capital and sustained investment, and I look forward to discussing it today. The President's budget supports the department's goal of recharging the defense industrial base and the national industrial base, those small mom and pop manufacturing companies that are out there in your districts that help us generate combat capability and combat capacity to ensure that we're globally integrated, properly armed, and ready when and if our nation calls on us, while always taking care of our most important treasure, and that's our people. I'm deeply humbled today to be joined by the Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chairman, Fleet Master Chief Dave Isom, who represents the 1.8 million members of our enlisted joint force. They are the special sauce of America's military. We face dynamic in dangerous times, but I have incredible trust and confidence in the Joint Force today. I'm deeply grateful for those deployed members of the Joint Force that are out there right now doing our nation's work. And I remain humbled by the gift of the ultimate sacrifice that those fallen have given us, not just for the 40 during my time in this job, but across the history of our great nation, and their families who continue to soldier on. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of President Trump's historic $1.5 trillion 2027 budget for the Department of War. The President's budget request reflects the urgency of the moment, addressing both the deferred maintenance of longstanding problems as well as positioning our forces for current and future fights. I'm honored to be joined alongside the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs and Jay Hurst.
Iranian American communities against this illegal war, and if you approve this budget, you will complicit in the war crime of this administration.
If I may interject, I ask that we have order in the hearing room so we can proceed. I ask the witnesses suspend until the room is cleared. It appears it's cleared. Go ahead, Ms. Secretary.
Thank you. I'd like to start by thanking this committee and Congress for your partnership in securing the investments needed to maintain the most powerful military in the world. Our nation's ability to build, to innovate, and support the critical needs of warfighters at speed and at scale is the foundation upon which our survival rests. When President Trump took office, he inherited a defense industrial base that had been hollowed out by years of America Last policies, resulting in a diminished capacity to project strength, offshoring, outsourcing, cost overruns, and degraded capabilities. Under the leadership of President Trump, a builder-in-chief, we are reversing this systemic decay and putting our defense industrial base back on a wartime footing. Urgency informs everything that we do. We're rebuilding the military that the American people can be proud of, one that instills nothing less than unrelenting fear in our adversaries and confidence in our allies. We fight to win in every scenario, to include ensuring Iran never has a nuclear weapon. The $1.5 trillion FY27 budget put forward by the President will build upon the historic $1 trillion FY26 top line and will continue to reverse 4 years of underinvestment and mismanagement of the Biden administration. The $1.5 trillion budget will ensure that the United States continues to maintain the most capable military in the most complex of environments. Not to mention, however, that this budget also includes a historic troop pay increase, 7%, that builds on the pay increases that Congress has given in previous years. And the budget eliminates all poor or failing barracks. Quality of life for our troops is front and center in this budget. By supercharging our industrial capacity and transforming how the department does business, we are restoring American commercial dominance at a pace unseen in generations, transforming the defense industrial base from the broken, slow-moving systems of the past. We have flipped Pentagon acquisition processes from a bureaucratic model to a business model, decisively moving from an acquisitions environment paralyzed by bureaucratic red tape to an outcome-driven organization focused on delivering the most for taxpayers. Over the past year, through historic multi-year procurement agreements, smart business deals, we have sent an unambiguous demand signal to our industry partners, large and small, to build more and build faster. The result has been a surge, a revitalization of our great American factories and a massive reinvestment in the skilled American workers who serve as the industrial muscle behind our warriors. I'll provide a brief overview of what's been accomplished on that front in just a few months. These are announced new facilities and investments in support of American warfighters. The department has helped stimulate more than 250 private investment deals in 39 states and 180 cities in 150 companies, not just the big primes, worth more than $50 billion. This has resulted in 280 new or expanded facilities and more than 18 million new square feet of American manufacturing, 70,000 new jobs. These $50 billion in investments in new plants, new assembly lines, and new factories are private investments, not taxpayer dollars. By completely transforming our department's business model, American companies, private companies, are investing in their own factories with their own money. A historic demonstration of American manufacturing and defense revitalization, all with their capital, not Uncle Sam's. This has not been done before and is long overdue. It's from a bureaucratic model to a business model. These investments equal great things for American families and American workers and help ensure that we can defend the American dream, all American made. Together with the help of this Congress, we're turning the lights back on the arsenal of freedom. We're firing up the American economic engine at every level of our defense industrial base. Every policy we pursue, every budgetary item we request serves to ensure that this department remains laser focused on increasing the lethality and survivability of our fighting forces from the front lines to the factory floor. We truly believe this is a historic budget, and at every level, we have made it a fiscally responsible budget. This is also a warfighting budget. Under President Trump, we are restoring the unbreakable might of American manufacturing, which has to underwrite everything. We're providing for our warfighters, and we are putting the people and interests of this country first. May Almighty God continue to watch over our troops, and may we honor the legacy of those brave Americans that we've lost. That is our sacred mission, and that's what we'll continue to execute on. Thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I know we all understand you're going with the president to China. We all agree they're the greatest long-term military and economic challenge to U.S. and our Western allies as well. Of course, Taiwan, Japan, and Philippines look to us. So can you reassure the countries out there in the Pacific that their security will not be on the table during the talks in Beijing? Is our strategy to preserve American primacy or simply to accommodate China's rise? And can you speak to our commitment to preserving freedom of navigation in places like the South China Sea?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. I would never purport to speak on behalf of the president or what he will say or how he'll approach these talks, but having an opportunity to watch him work, every aspect of what he pursues inside this relationship is to ensure that American interests are advanced. And our department, underneath that, we've worked very hard in that region, in the Indo-Pacific, with Japan, with the Philippines, and others, to make that a priority, to ensure that America's security is amplified by burden sharing of partners who recognize the shared threats that we face and are willing to invest alongside us. And some of those things are known to the public. Some of those things are not known to the public. But since the beginning of my time in this job, we've focused in that area of operations to ensure that Admiral Paparo has every option available to include with partners to create all the dilemmas necessary to give America every advantage possible, whether it's freedom of navigation, access basic and overflight, and ultimately put the president in a position where he's going into Beijing in a position of strength, which he will be.
So would you be a little more specific about navigation, particularly in the South China Sea?
I think what you've seen from this administration is a commitment to freedom of navigation. Take, for example, the BAM and the Houthis, which under the Biden administration, they allowed American ships to get shot at without consequence. And President Trump undertook that mission, Operation Rough Rider, for 50 days, and the Houthis stopped shooting at our ships. It wasn't a nation-building exercise. It was an advancing of freedom of navigation and our interests. The same would pertain to any waterway in the South China Sea. America's ships should sail freely, so should others in the international maritime sphere.
Army Secretary Driscoll has described Ukraine as the Silicon Valley of warfare, as I suggested earlier. I think we'll agree on that. And the outcome of the war really matters to American interests. Is there a policy preventing senior department officials from traveling to Ukraine? Do you support or oppose senior officials traveling there?
Senator, we've had many senior officials travel there, and we learn a great deal. In fact, I've personally approved additional personnel there to learn from that drone battlefield, both on offense and defense, to ensure that we're learning every possible lesson from that conflict and incorporating it in real time into how we defend and we go on offense in an era where drone dominance is required. And that's why this budget spends so much on drone dominance. Take the lessons learned from Ukraine and other battlefields and ensure we're applying them throughout the fighting force as quickly as possible.
Well, I think what's not in dispute is that NATO is the most important military alliance in world history. Nobody's ever pulled something together like this and held it together to prevent the worst for a longer period of time. Basically, it seems to me that a lot of the European countries think that we're reducing our influence there, that they're sort of on their own, and somehow American leadership is not essential to NATO going forward. I would argue that it's certainly essential for us to continue to be the leader, and it's important to note the other countries that are looking to NATO, our allies in the Pacific, helping Ukraine, interested in coming to NATO meetings, anxious for America to continue to defend the free world, not just in NATO, but worldwide. It's a big job, and they're looking to us. There's nobody else who can do that. So what is the department's concise vision for the role of our allies and partners in defending America's global interests?
Senator, our vision is to have real, capable allies and partners. I think that's what we've seen in Epic Fury. Israel's Air Force and their ability, will, and their capability is a demonstration to the world. There are other allies like that, and we need more of them. So flags are not the goal. The number of flags involved in an operation are not the goal. The goal is the number of capable formations who can actually fight alongside the American fighting man and woman. So it's not just us all the time. I saw that in Iraq. I saw that in Afghanistan. Our generation has experienced that. No administration has done more to ensure that our allies and partners realize they need to step up so that we can amplify our capabilities. That's what the burden for other countries. It's other countries are capable of coming alongside us as well.
But I also think Putin's invasion of Ukraine helped get their attention that they need to step up as well. And the president's been very clear about that. So they are headed in the right direction. What I'm worried about is which direction we headed in.
I think it's very encouraging that European countries have stepped up to ensure that Ukraine can defend itself. I think that's a very good development.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Secretary, in January, President Trump signed the fiscal year 26 defense appropriations bill. It provided $400 million specifically to aid Ukraine in their fight against Russia. This is at a time when our European allies and partners have stepped up to take on the overwhelming majority of the cost of any munitions or support for Ukraine. So far, your department has not spent a dime of that $400 million, despite repeated follow-up requests from the chairman and myself. In a call just last week, your staff indicated we will see a spend plan for those funds this week. Will you commit to spending those $400 million for weapons for Ukraine, and when will we receive your department's spend plan?
I appreciate that question. The $400 million for European capacity building has been released from the Secretary of War's office, and we'll work with EUCOM to make sure they spend it accordingly and properly, which we have all faith that they will.
Mr. Secretary, when will this subcommittee get the associated spend plan for the $400 million?
Yeah, I mean, we will work with your committee to make sure that the spend plan as allocated, I want to make sure UCOM is fully informed in how they want to spend this. They're the closest to the problem set. And so working with them to ensure that you have the spend plan, we'll work with you.
Mr. Secretary, thank you, but it's May, and this has been the law since January, and you or your representatives have been asked this repeatedly on a bipartisan basis by members of this committee, and I think dragging our feet on this small investment in Ukraine's defense sends exactly the wrong signal to Putin at a time when the contest for freedom has its front lines in Ukraine. As you said, Europe has stepped up, donating billions to buy U.S. weapons to send to Ukraine to help them as they continue to take ground on the battlefield. But it seems not all the money donated by our European allies is going to buy new weapons for Ukraine, as they had understood. The memo you released just last week prior to your testimony at Senate Armed Services indicated DOD has and will continue to divert some of these funds back into DOD accounts for our own use. Will you commit, Mr. Secretary, to spend every dollar donated by our European allies for Ukraine on new weapons and capabilities for Ukraine?
The Pearl Initiative, which you're
Yes.
referring to, which is
Yes.
instituted underneath this administration so that European countries are paying for American equipment to provide as they see fit. NATO allocates where it would like to allocate that. It can
Right.
choose Ukraine if it'd like. That money, when it's paid for, that's where it goes. It goes to those efforts.
Well, look, as the chairman raised, and as I will repeat, I view NATO as the most successful mutual defense relationship we've ever had. And your comment about we need not flags, but real and capable allies, and the foot dragging on both Pearl and the investments in our Baltic allies and Ukraine causes me real concern. As you know, a bipartisan group of us from the Senate and the House went to Denmark to lay a wreath at the memorial to the 52 Danes who served, fought, and died alongside our troops in Afghanistan. Those were not just flags. Those were real warfighters who fought and died at our request in a war that began by NATO's initiation, a service and sacrifice in Afghanistan. I just think we're sending the wrong signal by the president's announcement of the intention to withdraw 5,000 troops from Germany. Could you help me understand what is the strategic reason for a drawdown of U.S. troops from Western Europe?
I would just like to clarify, Senator, it's never about the heroism of foreign troops. I fought alongside great British and European and Australian allies in Afghanistan. It's the political caveats and the limitations that they come with. It's not the troops. It's the capitals of those militaries that limit what they're able to do, where they're able to go, who they're able to fight, that create limits on our own. And anybody that's been in these formations knows that. So it's easy to talk about here. It's another thing to apply. And we need allies that are burden sharing, not becoming a burden with political limitations. I'm not talking about the troops.
Thank you. Our president said in Europe that we never asked for and never received anything from our NATO allies. Was that your experience in Afghanistan, serving and fighting alongside our NATO allies?
I've written extensively about that, and the vast majority of my experience was frustration with the limits of what those troops were able to do because of the political caveats, rules of engagement, and limits that came from their
But you don't
capitals.
doubt our question that about a third of all the combat casualties in our war in Afghanistan were our NATO partners and allies.
I would have to go back and check that number, but I take your word for it.
Let me just assert that hundreds and hundreds of service members from, as you put it, Australia and the United Kingdom, as well as many other of our allies, served, fought, and died alongside us. So I'm just going to simply say, in terms of our reliance on our partnerships, I'll agree with the chairman that at a moment when Russia and China, North Korea, and Iran are coming closer together and delivering a bedeviling lethality in this ongoing war in Iran, for which we don't have a clear strategy or clear answers, our better strategy would be to partner more closely with Ukraine, dig in deeper with our real values-based allies, our treaty allies in the Western Pacific and in Europe, and together find a path out of this, rather than berating them and bullying them for not coming along in a war they were not consulted about or briefed on before it began. I look forward to a second round. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Caine, When the Department of War was planning its operations in Iran, did you anticipate the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the resulting impact on oil supplies for many countries, including here in the United States, where we've seen gas, diesel, and home heating oil prices go up? I ask this question because there's historic precedent, obviously, during the Iraq-Iran war. Tankers were fired upon in the Strait.
Senator, thanks for the question. As always, we have an incredible staff over at the Pentagon and down at USCENTCOM. And we always look at the range of military branches and sequels. I won't comment on any particular one because that gets to whatever advice I may or may not have given to the president. And I do that in private, but you should rest assured, as should the American people, that we cover and consider the full range of things all the time in our careful consideration of military actions and the advice and or options that we present our civilian leaders.
It seems to me that there's been a different plan almost daily with dealing with this problem, which is why I ask. Mr. Secretary, let me start by thanking you for visiting Bath Iron Works in the state of Maine. The workers were very pleased to greet you and hear your encouragement and praise. The Aegis destroyers play such a critical role in our national security, from intercepting Iranian missiles to supporting combat operations around the globe. While visiting Bath Iron Works, you correctly described the DDG destroyers as the workhorse of the fleet and emphasized maxing out on DDGs sends a message to the world. I was also delighted that you noted that Bath built is best built, a slogan of which we're very proud. I fully agree with all those sentiments. That's why I was alarmed to see that this year's budget request only includes funding for just one DDG 51. That's down from 2 in FY26 and 3 in FY25. That reduction to a single DDG 51 creates uncertainty for U.S. surface combatant industrial base at a time when BIW is demonstrating huge progress in workforce retention, production stability, and faster throughput. So there needs to be a steady demand signal for DDGs in order to keep the yard operating at all phases, from cutting the initial steel to completing the ship. So I'm puzzled by why only one DDG is requested and concerned about what that will mean as far as maintaining that workflow. I'm particularly puzzled by the decision in reconciliation to request $1.8 billion for foreign-born surface combatants at the same time that there's the proposed cut for American-built destroyers. Wouldn't providing a demand signal for U.S.-built DDGs from the department help the industry further increase the speed at which these ships are being produced? And I'm sure when you were at Bath, they probably showed you the chart of the enormous progress that they are making.
I appreciate the question, Senator, and it was a great visit, and it's incredible what they do. To both your questions, the answer is shipbuilding capacity. And that's why we invest, $65 billion in shipbuilding in our shipyards, is because the reason for our request of that number is the ability to build them and how quickly. And so as soon as that capacity is increased, which we anticipate this investment will do, then we look forward to ordering DDGs into the future because they are the backbone of our naval fleet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Irvin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I associate myself with the remarks of Senator Coons earlier about the $400 million for Ukraine, and I hope that it is allocated quickly. I'd like to ask a similar question about the $200 million in that same appropriation bill that was designated for the Baltic Security Initiative. Has that money been released?
If it has not been, it should be. I don't know. Has it been released?
Senator, so I believe there was a mistake with how the appropriations bill was written. We're trying to rectify that through a reprogramming action to make sure we have sufficient funds in the DSCA account to execute BSI.
It's 5 months after that bill was signed into law. How long will this take?
I think it's contingent on the reprogramming action being approved by the committees of jurisdiction of the Department of War.
So you're suggesting it has to go back through Congress for the current appropriation?
I need to move money between DSCA accounts to execute BSI. That's
Well,
right.
I can tell you, I would like to work with you to dispatch that money. It is needed for the Baltics and Poland and needed on a timely basis.
Absolutely.
I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the war in Iran, which you, Mr. Hurst, testified before Congress, has cost us $25 billion, 14 U.S. military personnel tragically killed, and a tenuous ceasefire in place. As I look at the achievements, Iran to date, led now by an even more extreme supreme leader, the global economy is held hostage to the standoff in the Straits of Hormuz. Our munitions stockpiles are dangerously depleted, and Iran is no further from a nuclear weapon than before our invasion. General Caine, the president has claimed on several occasions over the past couple of months that the war is over, that the conflict has been concluded. What were the goals of the U.S. conflict in Iran, and have we achieved them?
Well, sir, I'm going to be mindful of my need to maintain trust with a variety of stakeholders in the job that I'm in, which includes you, the American people, the Joint Force, and the President. And to that point, only our political and civilian leaders set the national military objectives. Our military objectives have been clear the whole time around targeting Iran's ballistic missile systems, preventing them from threatening U.S. forces in the region, destroying the Iranian Navy, degrading its capacity and capability, and ensuring that they can't rebuild by focusing on their defense industrial base. I'll defer to the Secretary and the President on other strategic objectives, but that's what we've been focused on, sir.
Do you feel that the situation in the Straits of Hormuz indicate a victory on our side?
Sir, only political leaders decide victory or defeat, and that I'll leave it to them to opine on that. They are the ones who invoke or stop the use of military force.
Well, then let me put it in strictly military terms. Can you explain to the American people who are facing these gasoline and diesel oil prices what is going on in the Straits of Hormuz, where Iran, which was attacked by us, seemingly as the Straits of Hormuz at a standstill, with 1,500 tankers waiting for either permission or peaceful circumstances to navigate?
So I think militarily, it's a case where Iran is choosing to hold the world's economy hostage through their use of military power across their southern flank. And so I would encourage Iran to reconsider that. And I would encourage those allies and partners who have an opportunity to come assist with that tactical problem to do so.
Could you explain to the American people why, with the vast investment we've made in national defense and military, how Iran, after they've been attacked by us, is still capable of stopping the traffic in the Straits of Hormuz?
Well, sure, it's a complex situation out there with a lot of different small boats that are out there and other capabilities. Some of this is on the commercial traffickers. Some of this is on, again, back to the main problem, and that's Iran holding the global economy hostage through the Straits. I would encourage them to think wisely about their next moves and to take the opportunity to open the straits. They have that choice to make.
They certainly do. I guess the question in my mind is, as we talk about trillion-dollar plus budgets for our military, it appears that a very small budget is holding us hostage in the Straits of Hormuz. Yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I just want to start off with saying that these military operations against Iran have been spectacular. In a matter of months, we have degraded the largest state sponsor of terrorism beyond what I thought was possible, probably more to come. Ms. Secretary, 900 pounds of 60% enriched uranium, do we all agree that's what Iran has buried somewhere?
In this format, some of that should be classified, so I wouldn't comment on the exact amount of anything.
Okay, well, it's just pretty well known. They brag about it. Is it possible they could have 60% highly enriched uranium without them cheating in the past?
We know in every context of what Iran has undertaken, they've lied and cheated.
The answer is no. Everything that Obama and Biden did was designed to keep it to a civilian nuclear program. There is no way in hell they can have 60% highly enriched uranium unless they cheat. So everything y'all did failed. And you want to criticize? You failed. You allowed Iran to be a threshold nuclear nation. Everything you did failed. Missiles, Diego Garcia. Did they shoot missiles at Diego Garcia, General Caine, the Iranians?
Yes, sir. They shot a few.
Under the protocols we had in place, were they supposed to be able to do that?
Without reviewing the fine print, I believe the answer is no.
No, they weren't. You failed there. You failed to stop Iran from being a nuclear threshold nation. You failed to stop Iran from having missiles that could go thousands of miles. Why should we listen to you? Bottom line here, China. Does China buy 90% of Iranian oil, Ms. Secretary?
China buys a very large percentage of
Okay,
Iranian oil.
90% is pretty large. So does China buy, are they largest purchaser of Russian oil and gas?
I would imagine they're up there, Senator.
They are. They're the largest. So President Trump, when you go to China, realize that the person you're talking to is propping up Russia and Iran. I appreciate what you've done in Iran. I appreciate what you're trying to do to end the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Do you agree with me, Mr. Secretary, that of all the countries on the planet, China could have the most influence of ending this war if they chose to?
I think the most influence is in President Trump's hands and what he decides to do, and he'll set the terms of
what
how
if
this-
China stopped
But
buying?
ultimately, China has a lot of leverage. You're right.
Yeah, they did. What if they stopped buying 90% of oil from Iran? That's not President Trump. That's up to China. Do you support putting tariffs on China if they continue to buy Russian oil and gas?
Tariffs is not my lane, but anything
got
we can
you.
do to put pressure on people, I usually
Right.
support.
Well, do you believe that when we put pressure on India by a 25% tariff for buying Russian oil, they kind of backed off?
I would say I've had a front row seat to the efficacy of tariff policy, yes.
Yeah, I think it works, guys. And we're on the breakout here in a minute of having a bill that would give the president ability to tariff the largest purchasers of Russian oil and gas. And I hope he will use it. So I just want to, Pakistan. Are you aware of reports that Pakistan are allowing their bases to be used to park Iranian aircraft? General Caine?
Sir, I've seen one report on that.
Well, is it accurate?
Sir, I think based on the variety of classification matters.
Let me just say, do you agree if it is accurate, that is sort of inconsistent with it being a peace mediator?
Sir, I wouldn't want to comment on that based on the ongoing
Thank you.
negotiations and Pakistan's
Secretary,
role.
if the mediator is allowing reconnaissance aircraft at Iran to be parked in Pakistani air bases, do you think that's consistent with being a fair mediator?
I wouldn't want to get in the middle of these negotiations. I want
Well, I
maximum
do.
efficacy
I
for
want
our
to get in the
people.
middle of these negotiations. I don't trust Pakistan as far as I can throw them. If they actually do have Iranian aircraft parked in Pakistan bases to protect Iranian military assets, that tells me we should be looking maybe for somebody else to mediate. No wonder this damn thing is going nowhere. So, I appreciate all you've done. I'm very supportive of it. But when it comes to Pakistan and China, enough already. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. Mr. Secretary, we have been trying to track down the expenditures in the Operation Epic Fury and Operation Freedom now. And we've sent letters and we've got very few responses. We've been sending letters since March 10th. We did understand that there was a release that in the first 6 days, $11.3 billion was spent. And then recently we were told $25 billion was spent. Today, I think the number is $29 billion. Can you provide some details as to what consists of that $29 billion? Have we counted everything?
Yeah, Senator Reid. So I testified this morning to Hegseh that between the Joint Staff and the Comptroller staff, our operational cost estimate is now $29 billion. A lot of that increase comes from having a refined estimate on repair or replacement costs for equipment. Our munitions costs are fairly fixed. We think they're very accurate, and there's some O&M costs there as well. We're not making an estimate for MILCON at this time. We don't know what our future posture is going to be. We don't know how those bases would be reconstructed, and we don't know what percentage our allies and partners will pay for that reconstruction.
So you do not consider installations that have been damaged in the conflict, correct?
We just don't have a good estimate at this time.
So it's not in the $29 billion.
That's correct.
Expended weapons, are they totally included within the estimate?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, we have a full count of the expended weapons.
And weapons transferred to other countries in the region, are they counted in?
I would want to double check to make sure we have that accurately.
Please, I mean, you're coming up and asking for another significant supplemental, et cetera, and before we can, I think, reasonably appropriate additional money, we have to find out how the existing appropriated dollars have been spent. So that's critically important. And I know also that the budget asked for another $350 billion in reconciliation. How essential is that to your budget?
I would say it's extremely essential to achieve the generational investment that the president is trying to make.
But that would be on top of the $150 billion we received in the big, beautiful bill, which would be $500 billion, half $1 trillion in 2 years. And again, we're not getting, I think, the detailed spend plan, the detailed obligation plan for this. And without it, it's very difficult to say, just take the money and run. You know, we have a job to do too. Any comments, Mr. Secretary?
We recognize that, and our in a perfect world, everything's part of your regular order. This is a dynamic place with a lot of dynamic factors, and so in order to get where we need to with the historic investment for this department, we think this is the best allocation in order to get there, Senator.
Well, I think detailed analysis, detailed data that we receive will help us make more sensible judgments. And, you know, we're just sort of vague generalities are not helping this committee make critical judgments. And the trade-offs are significant. Deficit is increasing dramatically. We have to be conscious of that. We also have to be conscious to helping American families just get by. And inflation just hit 3.8% today, which is I think the biggest numbers is 2023 or something. So we're fighting all these forces that are not directly connected to your mission as Secretary, but they are connected to our mission. General Caine, your observations on the future course of action in the Persian Gulf. We're in this tenuous ceasefire. What's your sense of the direction forward?
Well, sir, I won't opine on a hypothetical. What I will assure you is that we retain and continue to hold a range of options for our civilian leaders. It would be inappropriate for me to opine on how it may go. But rest assured, we still hold many, many options.
Have you been surprised by the resistance of the Iranians?
Sir, as a warfighter, I always assume an enemy's going to resist. And the job of the joint force is to win at the time and place of our nation's choosing. So I always assume an enemy's going to fight, and I find that's the best pathway.
I think so too. And you communicated that to the president as you advised him before the decision was made?
Sir, as I've said respectfully before, I won't comment on my private conversations with the president in order to make sure that I maintain trust with him and with you and the American people and the joint force.
That's a principled response. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman, thank you. Secretary Hegseth, welcome. I just returned Friday from a visit to China. And one of the things that is seemingly clear to me is that Taiwan remains at the forefront of the Chinese efforts, next steps in what they want to accomplish. And we have commitments, I guess, to defend Taiwan. You can explain that to me as you choose. What I would like to highlight is while Taiwan is still at the forefront, at least in the minds of the Chinese, the United States is seeing the Russian invasion of Ukraine, in which we're yet to some degree still involved. We're having deterrence in the Indo-Pacific in regard to China. We're conducting operations in the Middle East. All of that has drawn strategic capabilities from the joint force. One of the things I think we can do to augment our joint force is strong allied relationships, partnerships with others. Given the current threat environment that we are in and the scale of the global demands upon the United States, can you speak to how the department views the role of allies and partners in sustaining our global posture? And does the defense budget reflect the needs to strengthen allied integration and maintain credible unified deterrence?
Senator, I appreciate the question, and I think foundational to it is a recognition that countries closest to the problem set should be most invested in ensuring that they can deter that adversary, which is why we want European capabilities to increase to deter Russian aggression. And when you look at the Indo-Pacific, it's been a focus of our department since the day I showed up, whether it's ASEAN or Shangri-La or traveling to the region, going to South Korea, going to Japan, going to the Philippines, having them to our building to build out those relationships in a very real operational way. It's not about what we can sign. It's about what contingencies and dilemmas can we create for adversaries who may seek to expand their sphere of influence, whether it's militarily or economically or through pressure. And so I think while we've been involved in a lot of efforts around the world, through the president's leadership, we've reestablished deterrence. The world knows that America's word means something, from Maduro to the Houthis, to Midnight Hammer, to Epic Fury. When the president says you can't have a nuclear weapon, he means it. When the president says you're an indicted individual, he means it. Everybody sees that, including in the Indo-Pacific. And when you do that, plus build out your alliances, not based on talks, but based on capabilities, access, spacing, and overflight, training, interoperability in discrete ways, I think all the right people pay attention to that and see it. And that's been the focus in the Indo-Pacific for us for a while.
And the budget request reflects those that circumstance that you just described.
Very much so. I would say Admiral Paparo, his request, his line items, his input was front and center in the build of FY27 to ensure allies and partners are considered. Yes, sir.
Secretary Hegseth, let me change the topic. I worked closely with Senator Cruz to introduce and secure the unanimous Senate passage of the Rotor Act. That was an airplane that originated from Kansas that saw the death of 67 people near Reagan Airport. The department in December the 17th, released a statement in support of the Rotor Act. And yet when the House considered the Rotor Act, the department released an additional statement and claimed that enactment would create significant unresolved budgetary burdens and operational security risks affecting national defense activities. Can you explain what happened between the first statement and the second statement that caused there to be a different reaction? And I ask this because it's still very important to me that the Rotor Act or something very similar to the Rotor Act is enacted into law. And apparently for it to be passed, it needs to be something that the Department of Defense is supportive of. So what is it that changed between the initial statement, the second statement, so that we can bring this legislative endeavor to fruition?
Well, I appreciate your attention to what occurred there. We've taken it seriously from the beginning. We recognize the need for the requisite oversight. It was an earnest change. The department didn't think that the changes that we had asked for were incorporated properly into the bill, and as a result, we came out and opposed it. But we look forward to an iteration of that bill to get passed because we think it's important that it happen.
If I can paraphrase in my words so I understand what you're telling me, it isn't that something changed, it was that what you asked for didn't get enacted in the Rotor Act before it passed the Senate?
Correct. We think some changes that need to be made were not made to the bill, and as a result, we changed our position, but we look forward to supporting something in the future. Yes.
In my 15 seconds left, General Caine, could I ask you to visit with me momentarily after the hearing so that I can raise a topic with you and have you point me in the direction of where I can find an answer?
Of course, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Murray.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, the war in Iran has not only cost 13 American service member lives, it is also costing American taxpayers dearly. Tens of billions of dollars and counting, and that's money that could be helping people perhaps get health care. But instead, we're paying for bombs dropped in a war that American people overwhelmingly oppose. Now, earlier this morning, I know that your team testified Trump's war with Iran cost $29 billion so far. That is $29 billion blown on a war of choice, and that's what it would have cost actually to save the ACA tax credits. But as my colleagues have already stated, what is concerning as well is it seems quite clear that that cost estimate is suspiciously low. Now, your acting comptroller suggested that damage to U.S. facilities was not factored into that figure. It is clear that there has been extensive damage to American military assets. New reporting from the Washington Post and others indicates that Iran has hit at least 228 structures or pieces of equipment at U.S. military sites. Can you tell us what the cost of damage done to U.S. facilities is because of this war?
Well, I think Jay covered pretty clearly what we can or cannot share, but I would simply respond that, and I think it's an important point, considering what the president is undertaking, is what is the cost of Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon? And the fact that this president's been willing to make a historic and courageous choice to confront that, it comes with cost, and we recognize that.
I understand what your judgment
that,
is. We have a judgment as well, and I'm asking if you can tell us, and at what point you can tell us what the cost of damage done to U.S. facilities is because of this war.
Yeah, ma'am, thanks for the question. So for future posture in the Middle East, we don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know how we're going to design these bases.
The damage to date, you do not have any cost estimate on it at all.
For the military construction, I don't have a cost estimate to provide you at this time.
Well, when will we get that?
Again, it depends on what the future posture is, how we decide to construct those bases.
To date, you know what has happened to date. We can't get that number, and that is a real concern to us. Our job is to appropriate dollars, and we're just told it's coming, and we don't get it. So it's very hard to do our budgets. And right now, Mr. Secretary, people are paying $4, $5, even $6, $7 for gas, and American taxpayers are now on the hook as well for paying for this disastrous war. You're spending families' hard-earned tax dollars on a war that many strongly oppose, and you're forcing people to pay more at the pump, and yet you're not even providing a real breakdown for the cost of this war so far. We have no real details, you have indicated that, and yet now you want Congress to send you $1.5 trillion more. To me, that is unacceptable, and I hope our Republican colleagues will join us in not only rejecting that absurd request, but in insisting that the American people get the actual answers on how much money, their money, we are spending on this. Now, let me turn and say, Secretary Hegseth, The president has called Medicaid, Medicare, and child care little scams and said, quote, "We're fighting wars. We cannot take care of daycare." I'm just trying to understand that. Is it your position, since you're asking taxpayers for another $500 billion for the war, that American families should be forced to give up child care and health coverage so that you can have $1.5 trillion for this budget?
Senator, that's not my department. I certainly support this, and I also support the president's efforts to find and remove fraud wherever possible in a
Well,
general sense.
I'm not talking
And we do
about
that in our
fraud.
department as well.
I'm
at every step.
not talking about fraud. I actually asked whether an American family should lose their health care or their child care to pay for this budget. That is literally what the president suggested.
The president has proposed a historic $1.5 trillion budget that will defend the nation and confront threats like Iran, which previous presidents allowed to happen, as Senator Graham pointed out.
Well,
Previous
we're-
administrations said they wanted to
Your
take care of this
opinion,
problem,
The question,
and they did
the
not,
question
and
in
he's
front of
doing
this
it.
committee, the question in front of the American people is, what are they being asked to give up for this $1.5 trillion? That's where I was talking about. And lastly, Mr. Secretary, your budget request cuts through Trump's ramblings and really, to me, makes the truth clear that you and the president don't value families as much as you value defense contractors. You want to increase the war
I
budget.
meet
Let me
every
finish.
family at Dover. Okay, don't tell me
Let
we
me-
don't care about families. We
Mr.
sure do.
Mr.
And we
Secretary-
take care of them in every way we possibly can.
I'm asking you about taxpayer dollars that everybody has. So when we've been to war before, we've asked people to do victory gardens. We've asked them to pay more. You are not doing that. You are asking for $1.5 trillion, which means something else has to be given up. That is what this committee is looking at. You want to increase the war budget for the next year by $500 billion. That is taxpayer money that could be used to feed families or build new affordable homes or wipe out some diseases completely or increase child investments 20 times over. But you are asking us to blow it all on war. And that's not even counting the money that you have spent bombing Iran or that you may still request in a separate supplemental. And to me, this budget wasn't even strategically crafted. $1.5 trillion is like the president decided that was the number and you all filled in the blanks. So what I'm here today to say is you asked for a massive laundry list of unnecessary spending. It's a huge payday for defense contractors, and you still don't even ask to give DoD civilian workers a pay raise. And to me, this is absurd. I know you do not care what I have to say. So let me quote you someone you might actually listen to. President Eisenhower. He said, "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children." That is what this budget proposal is asking. It's going to leave Americans cold and hungry to fund Trump's war and make defense contractors a fortune. So that is why I hope this committee throws that in the trash and comes together with a budget that works for all American families. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hoeven.
First, I want to thank you, gentlemen, and all of our men and women in uniform for the incredible defense of our nation, what we're seeing really around the globe, and certainly in the Gulf right now. The professionalism, the capability of our men and women in uniform is frankly beyond belief. It's just amazing. And we need to say thank you to those men and women and their families every single day. It's really something. My first question is, Mr. Secretary in General, is there a way to secure the Strait of Hormuz before we fully resolve with the conflict with Iran?
Well, thank you for your statement up front about the troops, and we certainly feel the same way. They're the best of America and deserve the best from all of us. As it pertains to, I actually didn't get a chance to reply to Senator Durbin, who said that Iran was attacked by us. I would take issue with that. For 47 years, we've been attacked by Iran, and they've
Right
been
on.
lying to pursue a nuclear weapon, and
Absolutely.
President Trump had the courage to do something about it. I don't think enough has been stated about the blockade and the power of the blockade and the dilemma that our blockade creates for them. They can't move anything out of Iranian ports, and over, I think it's 65 ships at this point have been turned around or disabled. The economic pressure that creates on them greatly outstrips the pressure on us. And we don't use the Strait of Hormuz anywhere near as much as the rest of the world does, or certainly they do. And I think it creates a lot of dynamics for future energy dominance for the United States of America, considering the increased capability that our country has, not to mention opportunities in Venezuela. So we have a range of options, as the chairman and I have discussed extensively, mostly privately, but some in public, to ensure that transit were to continue, should the president or others want us to go in that direction. But ultimately, we control the strait. Because nothing's going in that we don't allow to go in. And trust me, when we look at what Iran's thinking about that, they know they can't break it, and it's very concerning for them.
Iran only responds to strength and force. And that's specifically why I asked the question, in that their evil regime, can make their people suffer and hang in there. But if we can keep the pressure on with the naval blockade and navigate the Strait of Hormuz, we can keep the stranglehold on this evil regime and force the type of solution that we need and the kind of verification we need to enforce it. And that's, again, why I asked this question, and maybe both you gentlemen could respond to that. I'm not saying that is what the outcome will be, or, ultimately it's up to President Trump. But what I'm saying, is it possible to keep that stranglehold on with the blockade, even though, the tyrants, the IRGC won't give up right away, and secure the Strait of Hormuz while we continue to put that pressure on them for a result that can work for this country and the world, and that's enforceable? And I'd like you to give me some more color on that, both you gentlemen.
Sure, I'll take a moment here and talk about pressure. And what you're really alluding to is what the entirety of the interagency is working on, with a hat tip toward Secretary Bessent, Secretary Rubio, and the rest of the interagency. The totality of total pressure, which the military element is just one component on, is what the regime in Iran is feeling right now. And I think there's no shortage of ability to hold that pressure. The decision on for how long to hold that pressure is, of course, a political one and within our civilian leadership. But I would highlight that they are absolutely feeling that pressure, not just from the blockade, as the Secretary talked about, but the continuation of sanctions that Treasury and others have put on there. And we retain a range of military options.
Well, I 100% agree with you, but their ability, the regime's ability to endure pain is significant because they just put it on their people. My point is keeping that pressure on them, but at the same time securing passage in a way where commercial traffic will start moving. That relieves pressure on us and our allies. And that's what I'm asking for more color on, how you effectuate that.
Senator, there are options for that should we go in that direction. There's a multitude of different directions should the president seek to go that way that we're prepared to operate on. Evidenced by the destroyers that went in and came back out.
Exactly.
To the great detriment of the limited ability of Iran to defend. I mean, remember, the entirety of Iran's conventional navy is at the bottom of the
As with
Persian Gulf.
everything you do, you start out at a really high level and then you just get better. And I'm seeing that with this blockade right now, with the way you disabled those last two tankers. I mean, you're getting better at blockading. And again, that's why I'm looking for continued options to secure traffic in the Strait while we continue to put pressure on Iran. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary General, thank you for being here. Secretary, I want you to provide some reassurance for my constituents. In 2019, the DIA published that Iran, quote, had swarms of small boats, large inventory of naval mines, an arsenal of anti-ship missiles that can severely disrupt maritime traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. In 2025, after Operation Midnight Hammer, a Brookings expert said, quote, "It is wrong to conclude Iran is now a defeated nation and will act accordingly. Iran's demonstrated destructive missile capabilities have penetrated nearly every part of Israel. Iran's arsenal could endanger American forces in the Gulf." And Senator Collins asked General Caine about the extent to which you were briefed and the president was briefed about the very likely outcome of this kinetic engagement. And there are some data points that seem to indicate that we did not see all of this coming, or that we didn't account for it. We may have been briefed on it, but we didn't account for it. Parts of the THAAD and Patriot systems in South Korea were moved to the Middle East. This is after the war. After the war, munitions were moved from around the world to defend U.S. sites in the region. There was a rush to evacuate United States personnel, and Iran struck more than 200 structures and equipment at 16 U.S. sites. So, Secretary, can you just reassure us that this was all foreseen and part of the plan, or can you tell us whether there were any surprises here?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. I can reassure you that it was all accounted for. Every aspect of this was poured over by the Joint Staff, by civilian leadership, and represented in pursuit of a very clear goal. And the chairman laid out correctly what the metrics militarily were from the beginning, whether it's ballistic missiles, Iran's Navy. You know, you can't contest a blockade if you don't have a conventional Navy, destroying the defense industrial base. But it was all in service of ensuring Iran never has a nuclear weapon.
So as a
And
for, just
if
as a
you
for
have,
example.
I mean, that was, so I want you to know, it was all seen through the lens of preventing Iran from having.
Yeah,
the
I
ability
understand
to
that's the
threaten region
underlying
or us.
objective, and I do not dispute the military success. I don't think there's any doubt that when the most powerful, most well-funded, most technologically advanced, most disciplined, most trained military in human history sets out to do something, they almost always accomplish it. And so that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just wondering why we're moving THAAD assets from South Korea after the war started. I'm just wondering why there was a scramble to evacuate personnel. And I'm wondering why the President of the United States, our Commander-in-Chief, said that he was shocked that Iran would retaliate by striking other countries in the region. This was not just foreseeable, it was foreseen. It was, you know, this is, you don't need to get into a skiff to understand that their likely play was to asymmetrically retaliate and then to close the strait. And then it happened. And then the president said, gosh, who could have seen this coming? I'm just trying to figure out, for those of us on the left and the right who are wary of regime change wars, who are wary of happy talk, who have learned through terrible experience the cost of this kind of
You guys
adventure.
tired of this one?
Why is this any different, and why didn't we see this coming?
I appreciate your lauding of the force up front, and earnestly, that it's the greatest fighting force on planet Earth. But that was the same fighting force that surrendered to Iranian fast boats under the Biden administration. We all remember the pictures. Remember the Americans with their hands above their head at gunpoint of the Iranians? It's because they didn't have leadership like President Trump, who empowered them to do what was necessary. The Biden administration allowed them to pursue nuclear ambitions, didn't do anything about it. President Trump stepped in. We factored all the risk and ranges of options, put in maximum defensive capability for our troops as we could in real time. Empowering the CENTCOM commander with everything he needed to ensure this mission could be as successful as possible, knowing there are branches and sequels of every operation that have to be accounted for.
I'm going to
factor the Navy. You might wonder, why would you sink the Navy if you're trying to prevent a nuclear Iran? There's reasons for that, because you're planning for contingencies in other ways that this could go as well.
Secretary, I'm trying to stay on time here. I hear what you're saying. I just don't hear an answer to the question of why we had to take certain actions that could have been taken before the kinetic engagement and would have kept our assets and our personnel more safe and would have looked and actually been more planful, more thoughtful, more well executed. Why are we doing all of this stuff as if it's a scramble if all of this stuff was foreseen?
I think I'm quite confident, along with the CENTCOM commanders, that we took every action possible to ensure that we were prepared for this conflict.
Thank you.
All right, I gotta wake myself up a little bit. I'm gonna switch gears. Are you guys okay with that? I can always go back to that, but let me get to what else is going on, okay? Yeah. How do I do this again? At least Pete looks good. Pete looks good. Pete looks good. Dang. Okay. want to make sure I get to this before it gets too late. So let me switch gears. But you know, they're having their hearing about Iran and all those things, so he's gonna be in the news. I can watch Pete all day, but that doesn't mean you guys have to. You got the idea. You got the idea, right?
Over there, your thoughts?
Here we go.
Well, I mean, he's going into, he's right that he doesn't need China's help on Iran. He's got Iran perfectly under control. And quite frankly, what he's been doing on the world stage has strengthened his hand going into these talks with Xi Jinping. China gets 75% of its oil from three sources. Gets it from Venezuela, from Russia, and through the Strait of Hormuz. And guess who controls all of those things now? We control Venezuela's oil. We've been sanctioning and Russian oil and seizing their shadow tankers. And we now have a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz for Iranian oil. That's pretty significant. And we've shown through that blockade that if they ever tried to do something on Taiwan, 80% of their oil goes through the Strait of Malacca. If we can shut down the Strait of Hormuz to Iran, we can shut down the Strait of Malacca too. So he's strengthened his hand by what he's done in Venezuela, what he's doing vis-a-vis Russia, and what he's doing with Iran when it comes to China.
Yeah, Mark, there's a live look at Joint Base Andrews as they prepare to receive the president. Give us your thoughts on this high-stakes trip to China.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because he came into office inheriting a very difficult situation. When he left office 4 years earlier, the world was at peace. And he came back and the world was on fire. There were wars on two continents, and something that didn't exist when he was first in office, an axis between China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran had formed to challenge the West all across the world. And he's been systematically dismantling that axis. He bombed the Houthis. He bombed Iran's nuclear program. He's taken down the Maduro regime in Venezuela. He's put sanctions on Russia. And everyone looks at Ukraine and says, that he's cut aid. He hasn't cut aid. He's just making NATO pay for it. But he's increased the number of weapons he's giving them. He's put oil and gas sanctions, which Biden wouldn't do. He's authorized the Ukrainians to fire into Russia using U.S. equipment, and he's even giving them targeting information. So he's put the pressure on Putin. And now he's put pressure on China when it comes to its oil, which it's completely dependent on. So I think he's in a very strong position going into these talks in Beijing.
Mark, let's talk about the relationship between the president and Xi Jinping. I accompanied the president on his 2017 state visit to Beijing. The relationship seemed to be great. But I remember in 2020, after COVID hit, I talked to the president about his relationship with Xi. He said he's not very happy with him. He doesn't even want to talk to him. Then we went through 4 years of the Biden administration where U.S.-China relations really floundered. So President Trump says, look, Xi Jinping is a great friend of mine. We get along well. But where do you think it really sits?
I think that he has an ability to get along with leaders who don't share America's values or their interests, which is a strong thing for a president to be able to do. And look, he's managing a very complex situation when it comes to China, much more complex than Russia, much more complex than Iran, which is that, for the last quarter century, when we made the decision to let China into the WTO and join the global trade regime, everyone said, oh, it's going to make them more democratic, less repressive. They're going to follow the rules-based order and all the rest of it. And instead, the opposite has happened. What we've seen is they become more repressive. They become more aggressive on the world stage. They use the wealth they got from the trade to build up their military to challenge us. And they've been strengthened in a lot of ways. And so we've got this trading relationship now with them that you can't just reverse that. It's like a cancer that's entangled a healthy organ, and if you try and extract it, then you could kill the patient. So he's got to deal with this metastasized cancer in the trade relationship, where we've become dependent on China for all sorts of things, for rare earths, for pharmaceuticals, for all sorts of different things that we need them for. So you can't just have an aggressive relationship. You can't just cut off the relationship. We need time to be just as we became energy independent from the Middle East. Need rare earth independent from China, but you can't do that overnight. It takes a long period of time, and so he's got to manage this relationship over a period of transition.
Well, he is on his way there now. We'll see how it goes. To China. He's going to step in front of the cameras, it appears. So let's stop and listen as he departs for China.
What do you?
At what point are you done negotiating with Iran?
Well, we're going to see what happens. We're only making a good deal. We have their military's gone; it's wiped out, and we're only going to make a good deal. And we'll see what happens. But I believe that one way or the other, it's going to be very good for the American people, and I think actually very good for the Iranian people.
Are you reconsidering the Pakistanis as mediators?
No, they're great.
What?
I think they're great.
Mr.
I think
President.
the Pakistanis have been great. The Field Marshal and the Prime Minister of Pakistan have been absolutely great.
Mr. President, what is your message to President Xi as it relates to the Iran war?
Well, I think number one, we're going to have a long talk about it. I think he's been relatively good, to be honest with you. You look at the blockade, no problems. They get a lot of their oil from that area. We've had no problem, and he's been a friend of mine. He's been somebody that we get along with. And I think you're going to see that good things are going to happen. This is going to be a very exciting trip. A lot of good things are going to happen.
Do you think he needs to intervene at all with the Iranians?
I don't
Do you
think
think
he
he can
does,
help
no.
in any way?
No, I don't think we need any help with Iran. We'll win it one way or the other. We'll win it peacefully or otherwise. Their Navy's gone. Their Air Force is gone. Every single element of their war machine is gone. They've killed a lot of people. They've killed 42,000 people at least over the last month and a half. We win. I mean,
Mr. President,
no matter how you cut it.
Mr. President, what do you think? Do you believe, Mr. Kurdi, sir, Mr. President, do you believe your visit to China will impact of international economy and price of oil?
It's going to be a positive. We're going to have a very good meeting. I spoke with President Xi. We both look forward to the meeting. It's going to be great.
Mr. President, what is going to be your red line to end the ceasefire for you? What will it take to pull the plug?
Well, we're going to see, and we'll be thinking about it on the flight, and we'll be thinking about it for the next little while. But we've beaten their military very soundly. That's over with. The blockade is very effective. It's been 100% effective. And one way or the other, it's going to work out very well. It's going to work out very well. I think you're going to have so much oil. You're going to have a gusher of oil like you've never had before. So when oil goes up a little bit, I thought it would go up much more. If you go back 3-4 months ago, when we were contemplating, we assumed oil would go much higher. Yesterday it was at $99. And if you think about it, I would have taken that all day long because it's very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. They will not have a nuclear weapon. They know that. They've agreed to that. And then that's not what they said to me when it came to pay. We don't play games. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon.
Mr. President, you promised to bring inflation down. It's now at its highest level in 3 years. Are your policies not working? What's happening?
Policies are working incredibly. If you go back to just before the war, for the last 3 months, inflation was at 1.7%. Now, we had a choice. Let these lunatics have a nuclear weapon. If you want to do that, then you're a stupid person, and you happen to be. I mean, I know you very well. Anybody that wants them to have a nuclear weapon is a stupid person. So we said we're going to take the greatest stock market in history, and we're going to go down a little bit. And actually, that turned out to be incorrect because our stock market is now at the highest point in history, which frankly surprised a lot of people. It's a very simple message. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they won't have a nuclear weapon. And that's 100%. Their Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone. Their anti-aircraft is gone. Their radar is gone. Their leaders are gone. They're all gone. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon.
Are you ready to extend the waiver on Russian oil to ease the global food crisis?
We're going to do whatever is necessary. And as soon as this war is over, which will not be long, you're going to see oil prices drop, and you're going to see a stock market, which is already at the highest point in history, go through the roof. You're going to see the golden age of America, frankly, and you're seeing it now. So as soon as this is over, don't forget, You have hundreds of ships, loaded up with oil that want to come out. As soon as they come out, we're going to have a gusher of oil, and you're going to have inflation that goes way down. Now, with all of this, inflation is much lower than it was under Biden. Biden had the highest inflation in the history of our country. Inflation is nothing by comparison, but our inflation is just short term. Because if you go from just before the war, we were for the last 3 months 1.7%. And now what you have is as soon as this war is over, you're going to see inflation go down to probably 1.5%.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Mr. President, yesterday you said the Kurdish arms for security for themselves. A U.S. military official said that the Kurds have not received any arms, and the Kurdish political parties are denying receiving any arms.
The officials are wrong.
The message of Chinese people, sir. I'm the summit.
Is we have a ballroom that's under budget. It's going up right here. I've doubled the size of it because we obviously need that. And we're right now on budget, under budget, and ahead of schedule. I doubled the size of it, you dumb person. It's double the size. You are not a smart person. Right over here. Wait a minute. Right over here. And based on a lot of things that have happened over the last year, we doubled the size of the ballroom. So we're going to have a ballroom that's appropriate for the White House. We doubled the size. The ballroom now is ahead of schedule, and it's a little bit under budget, depending on the finishes that we use.
The president of Cuba has his stage number. The president of Cuba has his stage number.
Well, they're not doing well. Cuba is not. And we'll be talking about Cuba at the right time.
Mr. President, let me ask you about Venezuela. Some Venezuelans are concerned that there are some political prisoners still in their prison.
Yeah, we're going to get them all out. And I'll tell you what, Delphi's doing a great job. The people of Venezuela are thrilled with what's happening. They can't even believe it. They're dancing in the streets. And as you know, we have Exxon, we have Chevron, we have all of the big companies going in. And Venezuela now is making more money than they've made in the last 25 years. As you know, they let a lot of the political prisoners out, and the rest will be coming.
Thank you.
Did you ask Marty Terry to resign, sir? Or did you fire your FBI
Well, I don't want to say,
commissioner?
but Marty's a great guy. He's a friend of mine. He's a wonderful man, and he's going to be off. And the assistant, the deputy, is taking over temporarily until we find. Everybody wants that job. It's a very important job. Marty's a terrific guy, but he's going to go on and he's going to lead a good life. He was having some difficulty. You know, he's a great doctor. And he was having some difficulty, but he's going to go on and he's going to do well. Everybody wants that job.
So the midterm elections, would you send the National Guard or ICE to voting locations in November? Would you do that?
Well, you know what? I'd do anything necessary to make sure we have honest elections. We have to have honest elections.
So you're not ruling that out?
It's all life support. Is presidency the person to bring it back to life?
What happens? We're going to have a great people in China. The wonderful guys, the friends of mine. We're going to have a great people. I just like him. The end of the war in Ukraine, I really think it's getting very close.
What's your advice? China invest $1 trillion in the U.S. Will China invest $1 trillion in the U.S.?
When you're negotiating with Iran, Mr. President,
I don't think about American financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. You cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all. That's the only thing.
Mr. President, will China invest $1 trillion in the U.S. or NATO?
Dan?
What is more broken, NATO or OPEC?
Well, OPEC is having some difficulty right now because one of those things, but that has nothing to do with me. NATO was very disappointing to me. NATO was not there when we wanted them. We don't need NATO. We don't need NATO. But if we did need them, they just weren't there.
He can help and contribute to a deal with Iran.
He could. I mean, it might be. I don't think we need any help with Iran, to be honest with you. They're defeated militarily, and they'll either do the right thing or we'll finish the job. They're either going to do the right thing or we're just going to finish the job.
As you embark on this summit,
that we're going to have a great relationship for many, many decades to come. My relationship with President Xi is a fantastic one. We've always gotten along, and we're doing very well with China, and working with China has been very good. So we look forward to it. As you know, President Xi will be coming here toward the end of the year, so that'll be exciting too. I only wish we had the ballroom finished. The ballroom is right on budget and ahead of schedule, but I wish we had it finished now. You also may want to do one other thing. You may want to go see the reflecting pool because that's under construction, and for the first time since 1922, it's going to work properly.
Sir, and the gas tax in Congress.
Mark Stone from Sky News. What's your advice to Keir Starmer, sir? He seems to be on the brink. Well, my advice to him has always been open up your oil in the North Sea. You got one of the great oil finds anywhere in the world, and you're not using it. They're not allowed to use it. And it's one of the best in the world, among the best oils in the world. Open up your oil in the North Sea and get tough on immigration. Should he stay or go? Europe is being very, very hurt by immigration all over Europe. Not only stay or go? That's up to him. But I've told him from day one, you're getting killed on energy. You're windmilling your country to death. Open up the North Sea. You have one of the greatest sources of energy in the world. Open up the North Sea. The pressure is from 9 to
Governor Trump taxes on oil. Did you ask them to do that?
I think it's a great idea.
May I ask you two questions? So has there been any understanding between you and Putin that Russia should get entire Donbass?
No.
You have president invitation to travel to Russia. Do you think it might happen this year?
It could. I mean, I will do whatever is necessary. That war, I've settled 8 wars. That war is getting closer. Believe it or not, it's getting closer. And we think we're going to end up getting a settlement between Russia and Ukraine.
What is the goal of your trip to China?
I think more than anything else, because we have massive relationships with China. We're the two superpowers. We're the strongest nation on earth in terms of military. China's considered second. Who knows? I mean, who knows? But we are. There's nobody even to come close. And you see that whether it's Venezuela or whether it's Iran. Iran's military is decimated. I have a great relationship with President Xi, and I think it's going to remain that way. We have a lot of things to discuss. I wouldn't say Iran is one of them, to be honest with you, because we have Iran very much under control. We're either going to make a deal or they're going to be decimated. So one way or the other, we win.
What about
we're going to be talking about be talking with President.
Did you say earlier that the only thing that matters to you when it comes to Iran is a nuclear weapon? You're not considering the financial impact of this war on Americans?
The most important thing by far, including whether our stock market, which by the way is at an all-time high, but including whether or not our stock market goes up or down a little bit, the most important thing by far is Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
What about the pressure on Americans and prices right now?
Every American understands.
Americans, how they're feeling about
Every
what they're
American,
paying for food
are you listening to me? Every American understands, and they just had a poll, like 85%, which is surprising. It's only that they understand that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. If Iran has a nuclear weapon, the whole world would be in trouble because they happen to be crazy. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon. Now, if the stock market goes up or down a little bit, the American people understand it. When it's over, you're going to have a massive drop in the price of oil, which a lot of people thought would be higher. And I mean, it was $99 yesterday, which is low, which is relatively low. When this war is over, oil is going to drop. The stock market's going to go through the roof. And truly, I think we're in the golden age right now. You're going to see a golden age like we've never seen before. The minute it's announced, and I'll be the one to announce it because I'm the one that makes that decision, I could leave right now, and it would take them 25 years to rebuild their country. But I don't want to do that. I want to have it complete and total. So you ready? As soon as this war is over, you're going to see numbers like you've never seen.
I know how much you value loyalty. I know how much you value loyalty. Are you comfortable with people serving in the military if they personally oppose the Iran war or you?
It doesn't mean I'm happy about it, but I live with a lot of different.
Question on redistricting. So voters who are confused about the changing maps, the changing dates, and to African Americans concerned that this is going to draw black members of Congress off the map, what do you say?
Well, I think it's been a wonderful process. They've been the Democrats, or as I call the Democrats, because they are dumb in so many ways. They've redistricted for years, and now we took our shot, and it looks like we're going to pick up a lot of seats. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We want voters to have their choice. We want fair voting. We want fair elections. The Democrats have been cheating on elections for many years, and all we're doing is winning. Thank you.
And there he goes, John.
The first breaking tonight, President Trump is on his way to China at this hour. He will make a stop in Alaska before going on to Beijing. One of the major topics of his dialogue with Chinese leader Xi Jinping will be the Iran conflict. Beijing has been a buyer of sanctioned Iranian crude oil and has been hurt by the Strait of Hormuz closure, which has sparked a global energy and economic crisis. Before leaving this afternoon, the president was asked whether he would seek China's help in getting a peace deal with Iran. White House correspondent Aisha Hasni is in Beijing tonight to tell us how the president responded. Hi, Aisha.
John, good morning from Beijing. The president making some news on his departure, saying that he does not need President Xi to intervene on his behalf when it comes to the conflict with Iran, although he did say he's going to have a long talk with him about it as China stands to benefit the most from a reopened Strait of Hormuz.
Do you think he can help
in any way?
No, I don't think we need any help with Iran. We'll win it one way or the other.
Tonight, President Trump says he can handle Iran alone as he heads to China for a summit with President Xi in Beijing, noting, though, that China is the largest buyer of Iranian crude oil.
We're going to have a long talk about it. They get a lot of their oil from that area. We've had no problem, and he's been a friend of mine. He's been somebody that we get along with, and I think you're going to see that good things are going to happen.
Trump says the ceasefire with Iran is on life support. Democrats say Americans are already paying the price.
He started this attack on Iran, and gas prices went through the roof, and 1,500 tankers are sitting in the Straits of Hormuz trying to figure out what this president's up to.
The president also says he'll discuss Taiwan with Xi, the largest chip maker in the world, amid an ongoing threat of a Chinese invasion. Tariffs, AI, and rare earth minerals used in chips are also expected to come up, while American farmers hit by higher diesel fuel prices want China to buy 25 more million metric tons of soybeans.
They are such a large buyer that if we lose that market, it's going to negatively impact soybean farmers throughout the United States.
Trump is also bringing with him 16 tech and business CEOs, including Elon Musk, Apple's Tim Cook, and BlackRock's Larry Fink. A united front, says the U.S. ambassador to China.
These people want a level playing field. They're here to echo what President Trump is talking about, and we welcome them, and I think the Chinese do as well.
And John, Fox has learned that we will also see on the ground here in Beijing the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, the Trade Rep, Jamieson Greer, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who, as you'll remember, back in 2020 was sanctioned as a senator by China, banned from ever coming here. That, of course, does not apply to the top diplomat now coming with the president.
Yep, surprised
John?
that they lifted the sanctions on Rubio, but he will be there, as you point out. Aisha Husney kicking us off tonight. Thank you, Aisha.
Let's bring it forward. Trump Deputy National Security Advisor KT McFarland. KT, I just want to highlight for our viewers and listeners, President Trump, after taking questions at the White House on his way to JBA, he arrived JBA, and now you can see Air Force One is about to or making it starting to taxi. So we're going to keep our eye on the president's departure here, but he is leaving for this high stakes meeting in China, as obviously things are heating up with Iran. Get your thoughts ahead of the president's visit there to China.
You know, the president's he's got all the cards, whether it's with Iran or even whether it's with China. Now, we haven't given up with China as a strategic adversary, as a strategic competitor. They haven't given that up with us. We look at each other with different eyes, but at the same time, we can do business with them. And I think that's what this trip is all about. President Trump just said one of our main focuses is going to be on trade. We want to sell them agricultural products. We want to buy their rare earth minerals. That's until we can find enough of our own. They want access to the American consumer market, and they want to buy our chips. So there's a way we can do business with China right now. But what's unspoken is the real strategic advantage that President Trump has going into this, and that's the energy. You know, China is not getting energy from Venezuela. It's not getting oil, and it's not getting anything from the Middle East. And it's not just Iran, it's Iraq, it's Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. When you add that with the Venezuelan energy that China has been receiving, I mean, that's getting close to 50% of their imported oil. And all that means China's whole energy needs, its whole panoply of how much energy it needs to keep its industry going, that's probably 15 to 20% of all of China's energy needs. China can't go forever with a deficit like that, because that not only affects their industry and their manufacturing and their agribusiness, but it really affects their technology business. And that's the genius of what President Trump has done. We're going to, at the end of this Iran war, we are going to be dominant in most of the world's energy sources, and energy plus technology is what's going to drive the future.
Well, Air Force One about to take off there, as you can see it taxiing at JBA. KT, I want to ask you about Iranian leadership as these talks collapse, possibly eyeing an escape to Russia. What do you think about that, and what would that mean for this overall war?
You know, dictators have a firm grip on power until suddenly they don't. And you've got to look at what's happened in Iran in the last year, but particularly in the last 2 or 3 months. The senior leadership is gone. The first tier, the second tier, the third tier of leadership is gone. They have no military left. They have no Navy. They have no Air Force. They have no air defense systems. They have no military industrial base. Now, maybe there's more that we could do to, quote, finish the job. Maybe there's another 10, 15, 20% that we could destroy of their military capabilities. But what that's telling you is that the Iranian leadership, they've got to be in chaos. They know that their digital communications are compromised. Look what happened a year ago with the cell phones and the pagers in the Middle East. They know that if they get 2 or 3 leaders in a room, that could be targeted by a missile. So how are they communicating with each other? And it's not surprising at all that there's a split in their leadership between the pragmatists who say, look, we've got to keep our oil industry going because after this war, we've got to have the access to those funds to rebuild, and maybe the ones who say, no, we're just going to fight to the bitter end. But at some point, they're all going to run out of money. And you know, Sandra, I don't know if you remember, about a month or so ago, Secretary Bessent said, we're tracking the money. We know that those senior Iranian leaders have put their money abroad. They've started funneling their money abroad. The United Arab Emirates has said, we're giving you access. You can freeze those accounts. So they're running out of money.
Got it. Good point. KT, we keep watching Air Force One here, about to make its departure. We appreciate you joining us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Beijing. We look forward to your reporting there throughout this really important trip. And joining me now, as promised, Republican Senator Dave McCormick of Pennsylvania. He sits on foreign relations. He's an Army veteran, served in the 82nd Airborne in Operation Desert Storm. Senator, always good to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So we see the president now on his way. We just watched Air Force One take off a few moments ago. What do you think are the priorities for this trip? We always talk in terms of deliverables when you see a big trip like this. What do you hope is accomplished here?
Well, I think stepping back, we have to recognize that China is really our biggest adversary in the world, and they are vying for become the global superpower, really to displace America as a global superpower. So I applaud the president's diplomacy. We have to have conversations, but we shouldn't miss that broader point. I think there's probably three topics. One will be Iran, the Strait of Hormuz. I agree with the reporting that there's an alignment of interest here. China is very dependent on oil from Iran, so they should want to find a resolution and add more pressure. They also are a supporter of Iran with a lot of military technology, and I would hope the president's going to make them stop assisting Iran with its buildup of ballistic missiles and so forth. Second thing, of course, will be AI. And I suspect there'll be a conversation around maybe some guidelines for how we're going to interact with one another. We are really in a race for AI supremacy with China, and there's important that we maintain a dialogue and make sure that doesn't go off track. And then finally, it's about trade and investment, and as you said, rare earth metals. 70% of what we use in the United States from rare earth minerals and metals comes from China. So we're highly dependent, and we need to make sure that relationship is fair, that they're buying soybeans and natural gas and so forth, but also that there's reciprocity, and that they're not subsidizing their industries in a way that's going to hurt American companies and American workers.
It's interesting. You see how China, as you well put it, our number one adversary, and we see how much they steal technology. So many of the great minds in technology that are traveling to Beijing right now know too well from their own experience how much of their intellectual property has been stolen from China already. We've got a mayor in Arcadia, California, who just admitted to essentially being a spy for China. How important is it, do you believe, for the president to speak truth to power on some of those big issues, Senator?
Well, I think it's absolutely important, and I have no doubt he will. I mean, let's face it. President Trump's been talking about the risk associated with China for decades, and the unfairness of our relationship with China. He was speaking about that before many others were. So he is truly a China hawk in many ways, and I suspect he'll bring that thinking to the table. But I think he also recognizes that when you have the two biggest economies in the world and the interdependence between the two, that you have to manage that relationship carefully. And I think he's both been tough-minded in the way he's dealt with China, but he's also been very focused on making sure there's ongoing communications that support America's interests. And I think he's gotten that balance right. And China, listen, between China and the United States, the effort on Iran, I think, could be very effective. And as I said, this is an area where we really do have common interests. I hope China will play a much more active role than it has.
No doubt. Since President Trump's last trip there, President Xi has watched a lot of interesting things unfold. I mean, he's seen what has happened when Russia invaded Ukraine. We have overall been very helpful in that regard, a lot more helpful than some of their allies in Europe were. He saw what happened in Venezuela, the removal of the leadership in Venezuela. Maduro's now in a downtown courthouse in the city that I sit in right now. How do you think he views that when it comes to the question of Taiwan, which is, everyone needs to remember, as you well know, the semiconductor capital of the entire world?
Well, I think the first thing is, I think President Trump has restored American deterrence. I think our adversaries around the world, those who wish to do us harm, should know that if the president says something, he means it, and he may go about it in a very indirect way in some cases, but he's shown that America is willing to use its strength and power to advance American interests. So I think that's been a wake-up call to a lot. It hadn't been that way in the previous administration and many previous administrations. I think that's powerful. Second, American energy dominance at a time when energy is the most important aspect or one of the most about national security. America's energy dominance and the Trump policies to advance that have become a real source of global power, and China sees that.
Senator, it's always great to see you. Senator McCormick from Pennsylvania. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aisha. Joining me now is retired four-star Air Force General and former NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Philip Breedlove. It's so good to have you here on the program. You heard that delegation. It is a vast, big, impressive delegation of Americans accompanying the president to visit Xi Jinping in China. What do you suspect would be the picture of success on the back end of this two-day trip to China?
Well, Will, thanks for having me back on your show. Clearly, as you mentioned, this trip is going to have a business center, and trying to set business deals will be a part of what the president is doing. And so we should expect to see something come out of that. But as you also mentioned in your lead into this, there is a security dimension to this trip. There's lots going on when it comes to China. The president talked about how Xi is a friend and they expect to get along in this. But the fact of the matter is it's bigger than just Iran. Xi is helping the effort in Iran. Dual use items, chips, other things are showing up in all manner of Iranian weapons. And so these are weapons being used to attack and kill Americans. So there's things we need to accomplish there.
What an odd relationship, General. A relationship that has some level of mutual dependence. At the same time, we, at least as observers, can't ignore the antagonistic actions taken toward each other. And what we care about is China towards the United States. Let's talk about a few of those. And let me ask you if they even come up in discussions with the President of the United States. First of all, the Chinese buying sensitive real estate around the United States near military installations across the entire country. Is this something that you would expect anyone from the president or his delegation to bring up in China?
If I was the president and I was having a one-on-one with Xi or a very small conversation with Xi and his leaders, I would absolutely bring this up. It is really incredible if you plot these pieces of land that China has bought near our most sensitive installations.
Yes.
And these are not only intelligence, but the ability to monitor takeoffs and landings of our stealth bomber fleet, et cetera, et cetera. So this has to come up.
And there's more. Let me ask you about a few others very quickly, and let's see what you think about whether or not these have a role in a diplomatic conversation. We're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show, but this mayor in Arcadia, California, who's now been arrested for spying for the Chinese Communist Party. She's just one, by the way, of many that we've known of, whether or not in higher education, but infiltrating political office here in the United States. Now, I understand in the world of spycraft, there's a certain level of tolerance or at least expectation this goes on among nation states. But is that the kind of thing that would come up, in a rare trip to China?
Once again, I believe it has to come up. This is what the Russians have been good at for so long, this gray zone below the kinetic level war. And now China is becoming very adept at this kind of warfare inside of our borders.
Yes.
And it has to be a topic of conversation.
Okay, one last thing for you, General, because I think it's right directly in your wheelhouse. There are reports out there that China is watching, of course they are, exactly what happens in Iran and learning about American warfare, learning for any potential conflict. Do you believe that this conflict that we've had with Iran is giving anything away to a potential conflict with China?
Will, let me add to that. China has been watching how Russia has failed in Ukraine. And as you know now, Russia is backing up in Ukraine, losing ground every day. And so China has looked at what it takes to attack a well-defended place and how they might have to go after that. And let me tell you and assure you that Taiwan is well defended. So China is watching what Ukraine has done to Russia, and China is watching what America has done to Iran. And you bet they're learning. China's primary air defense batteries are all based on Russian kit, and American and Israeli stealth have flown through that Russian kit pretty much at will in Iran. So China's watching.
What a fascinating meeting, because what a complicated relationship, economically dependent upon one another, the United States and China, and yet really rivals on the global stage for dominance in this world. General Breedlove, thanks so much for being with us here today.
Thank you, Will.
A woman who ran and won for a Democrat seat. The mayor of California City, Arcadia, is a Chinese spy. That Arcadia mayor, Aileen Wang, just admitted to spreading propaganda for the People's Republic of China, right here on American soil. Under the U.S. Constitution, committing an act of treason means adhering to U.S. enemies, giving them aid and comfort. Is that what she did? And just how far is China willing to go to interfere in our American politics? I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. According to the Department of Justice, Aileen Wang and her former fiance ran a fake website from 2020 to 2022. They published articles at the direction of the Chinese government. Here's an example from Wang's plea agreement in which she instructed to share a story denying the existence of genocide and forced labor camps inside China. A 2023 report looked into the scope of Chinese espionage in the United States. It found more than 200 incidents since 2000, with a significant spike in recent years. Last month, the FBI also gave insight into China's nefarious tactics.
They do these very overt things to scare the rest of the community, and they recruit people to report, within the community. So they're creating this Orwellian climate of fear where everyone is afraid to speak out.
So there are Chinese spies among us. Aileen Wang, admittedly one of them. All of this comes as President Trump is now headed to China today for a high-stakes summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. And we are covering all of this from all angles. Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn will join me moments from now. Let's go first to Matt Finn for the very latest on the shocking case of a former California mayor who's a Chinese spy. Matt.
Harris, the feds say that former mayor here in California operated a bogus website that pretended to be a news source for the Chinese American community, but instead promoted propaganda on behalf of China. The federal plea agreement says Aileen Wang took directives from the People's Republic of China on what to post on the fake website between 2000 and 2022 before she became a council member and ultimately mayor of Arcadia. For example, in 2021, Wang reposted a pro-Chinese essay that read, "There is no genocide in Xinjiang. There is no such thing as forced labor in any production activity, including cotton production. Spreading such rumor is to defame China." Now, right after that article was shared on the bogus website, a Chinese official praised Wang and others in a group chat, writing, "So fast. Thank you, everyone." Federal prosecutors say Chinese officials had such fine control of the website that they would even message Wang and others about specific paragraphs or edits they wanted in articles, all to make the PRC look good.
Essentially, it means she worked in the United States for another government, for its officials. She executed directives. She did what they told her to do. They'll give her praise for how well she's doing, and she'll say, "Thank you, leader."
As part of the federal plea agreement, Wang resigned as mayor of Arcadia, California, and pleaded guilty to the felony offense of acting as an illegal agent. She faces up to 10 years in prison. Now, the feds say Wang worked alongside her former fiance, Mike Sun, who also previously pled guilty to espionage charges and was sentenced to 48 months in prison. Harris.
Matt, thank you very much. And focus now, Senator Marsha Blackburn, Republican from the great state of Tennessee, a member of the Judiciary and Finance Committees, and now a candidate for governor of Tennessee. Good to see you today. I can't say that we can be all that shocked when you look at the numbers of people from that country, China, working against us on American soil. But your reaction to this case?
What we know is that she is guilty, has pled guilty to these actions. And Harris, it just makes the point. As you said, the spies are among us. China will lie. cheat, steal in order to get our intellectual property. And the CCP is involved in this, whether it is embedding spyware into some of their hardware for our online systems, whether it is trying to get into research institutions, whether it is their soft propaganda programs like Confucius classrooms. And let me tell you something, any high school that is having these students from China, you need to be very careful about that. You need to watch out who is coming in. These colleges that still have Confucius institutes, think about what you're doing. These cities that still have sister city programs with these cities in China. Harris, what they're doing is opening the door for this soft propaganda. And bear in mind, the Chinese Communist Party is directing every bit of this. They were directing the mayor of Arcadia, California, who was running this so-called website.
Look, what you're talking about is an enemy from within. And
oh, absolutely.
Getting into just the minutia of the way that we live and run our government and the democracy, the republic that we are. You're putting people in powerful positions. And look, Arcadia doesn't have millions of people, but you know what it has? Veins to the system, to a large state, to our country. It's really actually very dangerous. President Trump is bringing a business and tech delegation with him to Beijing, China, including Tesla and SpaceX's Elon Musk, Apple's Tim Cook. We'll scroll it for you here. Larry Fink, BlackRock, so on and so forth. I want to ask you, Senator, the timing of this trip and what we've just learned, along with the war that's going on. I just want your top line thoughts on all of it.
And on this, we should be aware that China is part of the axis of evil. Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. China serves as the bank for a lot of what is going on right now in the Middle East, what is happening to Ukraine. They are a part of this. Their goal, go read Sun Tzu and The Art of War. Their goal is to overtake us by the time we get to 2050. They are very given to that goal. They are not for us. And if you give them a chance to cheat, lie, steal, they are going to do that. The CCP, that is standard operating procedure for them. And this is a word of caution, a sign of caution. As I said, think twice. Confucius classrooms, Confucius Institute, sister city programs. These are their soft propaganda items.
Look, it's really interesting that our president now steps into the fold and takes basically a parade of technology and business and high-profile titans with him, as if to say, I bring the world from my country with me. China, I'm going to sit down with you amid a war. What do you think that communicates to our enemies around the world?
And President Trump always negotiates from a position of strength. And China's economy is suffering. Their manufacturing is beginning to fold, and they're not seeing the growth that they once did. They are seeing diminishment in many of these sectors, and whether it's furniture or soft goods or hard lines. And so, Harris, one of the things they're turning to is technology. But the president, from a position of strength, taking the tech titans with him, is going to say to them, look, if we can get you to an agreement where we're going to be honest, you're going to be truthful, you're not going to cheat, these are things we can work with you on. But if you're going to continue down this road of propaganda and cheating, we're not going to work with you. China, because of the chip industry, because of technology, because of what they're wanting to do with auto parts, etc., they want to be a part of a world economy. But you know what? They've got to abide by some rules, and they've got to stop cheating and functioning with spies embedded in our institutions. And look at what they're doing with government, getting people in place so they can know what we're doing with these sensitive systems and where we're putting our money in grants, what we are doing to support local, state, and federal participation in different areas of governance. And we would rather China be a good actor, but China has chosen over and over again to be a bad actor.
Right.
They need to change those evil ways.
Well, and Senator, just to add on to it, you know, Benjamin Netanyahu and as the Prime Minister of Israel and others have been saying that it very strongly looks like China has been helping Iran amid the war. And that, again, would be acting against us as we hold that U.S. blockade, hold the line on that, and hold a ceasefire from our end of it as well. Senator, great to have you as always. Thank you.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Well, doctors in the
More on all this, Michael Allen, former National Security Council Senior Director with me now. And Michael, it's good to see you. Now Managing Director at Beacon Global Strategies. Michael, simply put here, does America need China's help in the war with Iran?
I think it would be helpful if they weighed in, but I don't think we can expect it at all, Bill. I think that they're more on the side of Iran, even if they have an economic stake in how this plays out. I think that global demand for their export-driven economy may eventually get them in a place where they would be constructive. Maybe behind the scenes they urge some cooperation, but they're not going to stick their neck out for us. And I don't expect that we really believe that they will.
Okay, we heard from the president last hour. Here's Iran's top negotiator on X. He said the following. He said, there's no alternative but to accept the rights of the Iranian people as laid out in the 14-point proposal. The longer they drag their feet, the more American taxpayers will pay for it. What do you read into that, Michael?
I see defiance, Bill. I see a group of people who, while they're historically resistant to pressure, don't feel any pressure at all right now. I'm glad the president has talked about perhaps the reemployment of the use of military force. You have to hold out or use military force to enable diplomacy. I've seen reports that he's willing to open up again the escort mission through the Straits. I'm afraid we need to rely on more hard power, even get the Iranians to a place where they might be conditioned to make real concessions, because what they sent over to us over the weekend, just as the president said, was totally unacceptable.
Yeah, when you say hard power, I assume that to be more military action. If you're right on that, you got Pete Hegseth and General Caine on the Hill. They're meeting with House members and Senate members, all right? We queued this up a bit earlier today on the Hill. Watch here, Secretary Hegseth.
We have a plan to escalate if necessary. We have a plan to retrograde if necessary. We have a plan to shift assets. Certainly in this setting, we wouldn't reveal what the next step may be, considering the gravity of the mission that the president is undertaking to ensure that Iran never has a nuclear bomb.
Well, the sense is that the president doesn't want to go back to military action. Is that your sense too, Michael?
I think so. He has really been loath to do that so far, especially here as he heads out for an important summit with Xi Jinping. He'll probably decide, I would think, after he talks to the Chinese and gauges whether the Iranians have sent any promising messages through that ally, China. But I think the president may have to go to a place where we start using measured use of force to remind the Iranians that we could get back to a place where they're actively being degraded more and more and more. So we've got to hold something out there, or else I don't think we get a good deal. And then Iran will be able to assert this sovereignty over the Straits of Hormuz that they seem to be suggesting in the interview you mentioned earlier.
Okay, now there was also another interview. I know you've talked about it before, Michael, and you watched it. Benjamin Netanyahu sitting down with CBS in 60 Minutes about the possibility of Chinese support for the Iranian war effort. It went like this.
China gave a certain amount of support on particular components of missile manufacturing, but I can't say more than that.
Does that disturb you?
Well, I didn't like it.
Because it's apparently doing it right now.
Could be. Could be. I don't want to speak for China.
Is that on the table this week, Michael?
I'd be surprised if the president has the time to raise this, but this is definitely something we're worried about. The Chinese, of course, by the way, they help the Russians, they're helping the Iranians. They're not really on our side on many things globally, but here they are really helping on the ballistic missile program. And that's what Israel is frankly the most worried about. Their defense doctrine can't accommodate a situation where Iran has many thousands of ballistic missiles. So I think their intelligence is staring at this. We see China helping Iran across the board too. I hope we discourage them, but I don't have a lot of confidence ultimately that they're going to help us on this score either.
Wow. It is sensitive and it is very important stuff. Michael Allen, great to get your feedback. Thank you, sir. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
So, Sandra, back here in Beijing, China, the Iran war looms large over the U.S.-China summit. Beijing's reluctance to pressure Tehran has frustrated the White House, and the president now saying the ceasefire is hanging on by just a thread.
He rejected a deal from Iran over the weekend. Can you tell us anything about that proposal?
It was just unacceptable. Iran has been defeated militarily, totally. They have a little left. They probably built up during this period of time. We'll knock that out in about a day. But I have a plan. You know what it is? A very simple plan. I don't know why you don't say it like it is. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
So there it is. U.S. Ambassador to China, David Perdue, with me now here in Beijing. And great to see you, Mr. Ambassador.
Great to see you, Bill. Welcome to Beijing.
Well, thank you. And thank you for making time for us. We were talking during the commercial. On Thursday, when the president's here, will mark your 1 year since your assignment here in Beijing. I'm certain that year has been fascinating. For those watching back home, what should the expectation be for the summit this week?
Well, first of all, this will be an historic visit by this president. He's the first United States president to be here since 2017, when he was the last president here. He and President Xi have already developed a strong, trusting relationship, and we're hoping that this meeting will continue that effort and strengthen that relationship. President Trump is on a mission, though, to develop a level playing field for our workers back home, our farmers, our ranchers, our businesses. And this is an ongoing conversation. We have Secretary Besson out here this week. So we think this is going to be a monumentally important meeting between these two great leaders.
Do you expect, and should we expect, anything to move forward with the war with Iran, given the visit here this week?
Well, this is an opportunity for China. I mean, we've opened the door for China to help us with Iran. They get 45, 48% of their oil through the Straits of Hormuz. President Trump's been consistent in asking the Chinese to get involved and help us with that.
Should we expect that, however? China's going to say, it's your war. And President Trump could say, yeah, but it's your oil. What comes between the two?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's their oil. They have every incentive to do this. They get a third of their oil from the Gulf states, only 15% from Iran, but they import 75% of their oil. They can't have this status quo for long. This strait needs to be open.
Let me read you something from the New York Times. Stunning headline here, and quite the quote. As Trump heads to Beijing, China is locked and loaded for a fight. Beijing signals that it's ready for a trade showdown, and it's building up a legal arsenal in preparation. How accurate is that, do you think?
Well, look, we know China has interest, and we do too. And we have seen what both of us can do last year. And this is where President Xi and President Trump's leadership really came to the fore, is they said, look, we're better than this. We can do this without damaging the rest of the world. It's not that we can put countermeasures on each other. We can damage the rest of the world. And these two leaders are here to try to listen to each other and develop a level playing field for everybody involved.
So in the meantime, you've got all these tech CEOs and the CEO from Boeing and a long list. There are 16 now who will be here. What does that say to China?
Well, it says we're united. I mean, it says that the business community is behind President Trump. These people want a level playing field. They're here to echo what President Trump is talking about. And we welcome them, and I think the Chinese do as well.
Will Taiwan be an issue in the following sense? There's a bill out there that should provide $14 billion in military assistance to Taipei. And just an hour ago, the president of Taiwan thanked the U.S. for its support. How much does that irk President Xi?
Well, at this point, you know, President Trump is doing exactly what every president's done since 1979. And what we're expecting, unlike Busan, where Taiwan did not come up, we're fully expecting Taiwan will come up as an issue. We will hear the Chinese out. But I don't anticipate President Trump making any major changes in our policy on Taiwan.
Busan happened in South Korea back toward the end of October. You mentioned the president's relationship with President Xi. Give me a little more insight into that.
Well, what people
how
don't
do
know,
these two men see? Go ahead.
well, they respect each other, number one. They see themselves as titans of their world right now. President Xi has been in power since 2012, and he has a long-term plan. And what these two people are demonstrating is respect for each other. And I think that's a model for the rest of us in the interagencies in China's government as well as ours.
Mm. What would you consider to be a successful summit?
Bill, it's already a success. The fact that Donald Trump is coming out here, we have a commitment from President Xi to go to the United States this fall. They talk to each other regularly. These are people who have a personal and strong relationship. And I think that's what makes this a historic meeting, is that they're going to further that relationship, demonstrate to the world that we want to find peace and stability so we can find a way to live productively together.
You're giving me the impression that these are not necessarily great friends, but they might be good friends. Is that the way I should read this?
You come from a large family, right?
Yes, I do.
So, they're good friends and they're friends. And so we're building a relationship here based on trust. And we go through decades. There's a statistic. We had a Senate CODEL here last week, a congressional delegation. First one we've only had 3 since 2019. From 2011 to 2019, we had 57. Okay, so there's a big change, and we've got to correct that.
Just about 30 minutes ago, I mentioned that the last time I was in China, it was 30 years ago. The changes are remarkable.
Yeah.
I really just see what this country has done. What have you noticed just in 12 months?
Well, more is what I've noticed over the last 40 years. The U.S. allowed China into the WTO. We've opened up our markets. We basically invested a lot of capital. Foreign direct investment, however, right now is down 45% in the last 3 years. The biggest change that I see here is they really worked hard to clean the air up. They planted a lot of trees in the last decade, and the affluence here is to be seen. However, they still have some headwinds in their economy, and that's one thing that getting these trade talks underway and getting them some of these things rationalized will help them as well.
Sir, I really appreciate your time. And I know a lot of people are curious about maybe the possibility of something happening on artificial intelligence. When I was out here yesterday and today, half the cars here are electric, half of them are gas powered. Where does the computer digital revolution affect the 1.4 billion Chinese?
Well, we're seeing another industrial revolution, an information revolution, a tech revolution. It's happening before our eyes and it's accelerating. We have engaged the Chinese at a working level. We want to continue to do that at the presidential level. We think there is common ground that we can work together to actually find common standards that we can help the rest of the world benefit from AI and not see it as a threat.
Well, it's 9:30 in the evening, and you said this is the first time you've sat down all day. So I take it you're working hard.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your time,
God
Mr.
bless you, Bill.
Ambassador. We'll see you throughout the week.
Thank you.
David Perdue, thank you. All right, now this.
Hey, everyone. I'm
Hey, beautiful people. Are we still friends? You guys like that? Okay. Speaking of which, before I go, let me give you one more before I get out of here. I think this one will make you happy. He's the reason we're all here. Okay. Okay. Let me give you one more before I go. My brain is shutting down. Look at him. Our commander.
What is your expectations for your?
Outside the White House.
Well, we're going to see what happens. We're only making a good deal. We have their military is gone; it's wiped out, and we're only going to make a good deal. And we'll see what happens. But I believe that one way or the other, it's going to be very good for the American people, and I think actually very good for the Iranian people.
Are you reconsidering the Pakistanis as mediators?
No, they're great. What I think they're great. I think the Pakistanis have been great. The Field Marshal and the Prime Minister of Pakistan have been absolutely great.
Mr. President, what is your message to President Xi as it relates to the Iran war?
Well, I think number one, we're going to have a long talk about it. I think he's been relatively good, to be honest with you. You look at the blockade, no problem. They get a lot of their oil from that area. We've had no problem, and he's been a friend of mine. He's been somebody that we get along with, and I think you're going to see that good things are going to happen. This is going to be a very exciting trip. A lot of good things are going to happen.
Mr. President, do you think he needs to intervene at all with the Iranians?
I don't think he does.
Can help
no.
in any way?
No, I don't think we need any help with Iran. We'll win it one way or the other. We'll win it peacefully or otherwise. Their Navy's gone. Their Air Force is gone. Every single element of their war machine is gone. They've killed a lot of people. They've killed 42,000 people at least over the last month and a half. We win.
Mr. President,
no matter how you cut it.
Mr. President, what do you believe, Mr. Curtis, Mr. President, do you believe your visit to China will impact of international economy and price of oil?
It's going to be a positive. We're going to have a very good meeting. I spoke with President Xi. We both look forward to the meeting. It's going to be great.
Mr. President, what is going to be your red line to end the ceasefire for you? What will it take to pull the plug?
Well, we're going to see, and we'll be thinking about it on the flight, and we'll be thinking about it for the next little while. But we've beaten their military very soundly. That's over with. The blockade is very effective. It's been 100% effective. And one way or the other, it's going to work out very well. It's going to work out very well. I think you're going to have so much oil. You're going to have a gusher of oil like you've never had before. So when oil goes up a little bit, I thought it would go up much more. If you go back 3-4 months ago, when we were contemplating, we assumed oil would go much higher. Yesterday it was at $99. And if you think about it, I would have taken that all day long because it's very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. They will not have a nuclear weapon. They know that. They've agreed to that. And then that's not what they said to me when it came to pay. We don't play games. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon.
Mr. President, you promised to bring inflation. Mr. President, you promised to bring inflation down. It's now at its highest level in 3 years. Are your policies not working?
No, my policies are working incredibly. If you go back to just before the war, for the last 3 months, inflation was at 1.7%. Now, we had a choice. Let these lunatics have a nuclear weapon. If you want to do that, then you're a stupid person, and you happen to be. I mean, I know you very well. Anybody that wants them to have a nuclear weapon is a stupid person. So we said we're going to take the greatest stock market in history, and we're going to go down a little bit. And actually, that turned out to be incorrect because our stock market is now at the highest point in history, which frankly surprised a lot of people. It's a very simple message. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they won't have a nuclear weapon. And that's 100%. Their Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone. Their anti-aircraft is gone. Their radar is gone. Their leaders are gone. They're all gone. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon.
Are you ready to extend a waiver on sanctioned Russian oil to ease the global crude prices?
It's necessary. And as soon as this war is over, which will not be long, you're going to see oil prices drop, and you're going to see a stock market, which is already at the highest point in history, go through the roof. You're going to see the golden age of America, frankly, and you're seeing it now. So as soon as this is, don't forget, you have hundreds of ships that are loaded up with oil that want to come out. As soon as they come out, we're going to have a gusher of oil, and you're going to have inflation that goes way down. Now, with all of this, inflation is much lower than it was under Biden. Biden had the highest inflation in the history of our country. Inflation is nothing by comparison, but our inflation is just short term. Because if you go from just before the war, we were for the last 3 months 1.7%. And now what you have is as soon as this war is over, you're going to see inflation go down to probably 1.5%.
Will you extend the waiver? Will you extend the waiver, sir? Will you extend the waiver on Russian crude?
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Mr. President, yesterday you said you gave the Kurds arms, but they took it for themselves. A U.S. military official says that the Kurds have not received any arms,
and the Kurdish political parties are denying this Singhani army.
The officials are wrong.
President, Chinese people, sir, you understand
How's that different than your ballroom? You wanted Jerome Powell fired for cost overruns. How's that different than your ballroom and their?
So what happened is we have a ballroom that's under budget. It's going up right here. I've doubled the size of it because we obviously need that. And we're right now on budget, under budget, and ahead of schedule.
The price has doubled.
I doubled the size of it, you dumb person. You can double the size.
What about
You are not a smart person.
What about the rest?
Over here, and based on a lot of things that have happened over the last year, we doubled the size of the ballroom. So we're going to have a ballroom that's appropriate for the White House. We doubled the size. The ballroom is ahead of schedule, and it's a little bit under budget, depending on the finishes that we use.
The president of Cuba has his days numbered.
Well, they're not doing well. Cuba is not doing well. It's a failed nation, and we'll be talking about Cuba at the right time.
Mr. President, let me ask you about Venezuela. Some Venezuelans are concerned that there are some political prisoners still in their prisons. Would you do something about that?
Yeah, we'll do it. We're going to get them all out. And I'll tell you what, Delcy's doing a great job. The people of Venezuela are thrilled with what's happened. They can't even believe it. They're dancing in the streets. And we have Exxon, we have Chevron, we have all of the big companies going in. And Venezuela now is making more money than they've made in the last 25 years.
Excuse me, sir.
As you know, they let a lot of the political prisoners out, and the rest will be coming.
Did you ask Marty McCary to resign, sir? Or did you fire your FBI
Well, I don't want to say,
commissioner?
but Marty's a great guy. He's a friend of mine. He's a wonderful man, and he's going to be off. And the assistant, the deputy, is taking over temporarily until we find. Everybody wants that job. It's a very important job. Marty's a terrific guy, but he's going to go on and he's going to lead a good life. He was having some difficulty. You know, he's a great doctor, and he was having some difficulty, but he's going to go on and he's going to do well. Everybody wants that job.
Midterm elections, would you send the National Guard or ICE to voting locations in November? Would you do that?
Well, you know what? I'd do anything necessary to make sure we have honest elections. We have to have honest elections.
So you're not ruling that out? A quick question, Mr. President. This month is considered to be the month of Africa. On the May 25th, we'll be celebrating Africa Day. Would you mind doing something special, like 10-minute interview to speak about your views on the Africa?
We would do that.
Ceasefire is on life support. Is President Xi the person to bring it back to life?
Well, we'll see what happens. We're going to have a great meeting in China. He's a wonderful guy. He's a friend of mine, and we're going to have a great meeting. We do a lot of business with China. We do very well with China, and they do well with us. And the relationship is very good. We're going to have a great meeting. We are going to have a great meeting.
Do you think he's got what it takes to convince the Iranians?
Whatever he can do to help, we like.
Will
you be able to talk about the end of the war in Ukraine with the president?
I think it's getting very close. The end of the war in Ukraine, I really think it's getting very close.
Will China invest $1 trillion in the U.S.? Will China invest $1 trillion in the U.S.?
When you're negotiating with Iran, Mr. President, to what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all. That's the only thing that motivates.
Or NATO?
Say it.
What is more broken, NATO or OPEC?
Well, OPEC is having some difficulty right now because one of those things, but that has nothing to do with me. NATO was very disappointing to me. NATO was not there when we wanted them. We don't need NATO. We don't need NATO. But if we did need them, they just weren't there. Do you think President Xi can help and contribute to a deal with Iran? He could. I mean, it might be. I don't think we need any help with Iran, to be honest with you. They're defeated militarily, and they'll either do the right thing or we'll finish the job. They're either going to do the right thing or we're just going to finish the job.
The message, sir, to the Chinese people as you embark on this summit.
That we're going to have a great relationship for many, many decades to come. My relationship with President Xi is a fantastic one. We've always gotten along, and we're doing very well with China, and working with China has been very good. So we look forward to it. As you know, President Xi will be coming here toward the end of the year, so that'll be exciting too. I only wish we had the ballroom finished. The ballroom is right on budget and ahead of schedule, but I wish we had it finished now. You also may want to do one other thing. You may want to go see the reflecting pool, because that's under construction, and for the first time since 1922, it's going to work properly.
Sir, the gas Thank you, Mark Stone from Sky News. What's your advice to Keir Starmer, sir? He seems to be on the brink.
Well, my advice to him has always been, open up your oil in the North Sea. You got one of the great oil finds anywhere in the world, and you're not using it. They're not allowed to use it. And it's one of the best in the world, among the best oils in the world. Open up your oil in the North Sea and get tough on immigration.
Should he stay or go?
Europe is being very, very hurt by immigration all over Europe. Not only
stay
him.
or go?
That's up to him. But I told him from day one, you're getting killed on energy. You're windmilling your country to death. Open up the North Sea. You have one of the greatest sources of energy in the world. Open up the North Sea.
From Nigel Farage,
Should state governors drop taxes on oil? Would you ask them to do that?
I think it's a great idea.
May I ask you two questions?
Has there been any understanding between you and Putin that Russia should get entire Donbass?
No.
Congratulations. You have a standing invitation to travel to Russia. Do you think it might happen this year?
Good. I mean, what I will do whatever is necessary. That war, I've settled 8 wars. That war is getting closer. Believe it or not, it's getting closer. And we think we're going to end up getting a settlement between Russia and Ukraine.
What is the ultimate goal of your trip to China?
I think more than anything else is we have massive relationships with China. We're the two superpowers. We're the strongest nation on earth in terms of military. China's considered second. Who knows? I mean, who knows? But we are. There's nobody even to come close. And you see that whether it's Venezuela or whether it's Iran. Iran's military is decimated. I have a great relationship with President Xi, and I think it's going to remain that way. We have a lot of things to discuss. I wouldn't say Iran is one of them, to be honest with you, because we have Iran very much under control. We're either going to make a deal or they're going to be decimated. So one way or the other, we win. But we're going to be talking with President Xi about a lot of different things. I would say more than anything else will be trade.
Just to clarify, did you say earlier that the only thing that matters to you when it comes to Iran is a nuclear weapon? You're not considering the financial impact of this war on Americans?
The most important thing by far, including whether our stock market, which by the way is at an all-time high, but including whether or not our stock market goes up or down a little bit, the most important thing by far is Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
What about the pressure on Americans and prices right now?
Every American understands.
Americans, how they're feeling about
Every American, are you listening to me? Every American understands, and they just had a poll, like 85%, which is surprising. It's only that they understand that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. If Iran has a nuclear weapon, the whole world would be in trouble because they happen to be crazy. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon. Now, if the stock market goes up or down a little bit, the American people understand it. When it's over, you're going to have a massive drop in the price of oil, which a lot of people thought would be higher. And I mean, it was $100. It was $99 yesterday, which is low, which is relatively low. When this war is over, oil is going to drop. The stock market's going to go through the roof. And truly, I think we're in the golden age right now. You're going to see a golden age like we've never seen before. The minute it's announced, and I'll be the one to announce it because I'm the one that makes that decision, I could leave right now, and it would take them 25 years to rebuild their country. But I don't want to do that. I want to have it complete and total. So you ready? As soon as this war is over, you're going to see numbers like you've never seen.
I know how much you value loyalty. I know how much you value loyalty. Are you comfortable with people serving in the military if they personally oppose the Iran war or you?
It doesn't mean I'm happy about it, but I live with a lot of different.
Question on redistricting. So voters who are confused about the changing maps, the changing dates, and the African Americans concerned that this is going to draw black members of Congress off the map, what do you say?
Well, I think it's been a wonderful process. They've been the Democrats, or as I call the Democrats, because they are dumb in so many ways. They've redistricted for years, and now we took our shot, and it looks like we're going to pick up a lot of seats, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We want voters to have their choice. We want fair voting. We want fair elections. The Democrats have been cheating on elections for many years, and all we're doing is winning. Thank you.
I would love to watch another Trump video with you guys, but I gotta lay it down. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Feel free to leave me a comment under my community wall. I go through all my comments. Leave me a video suggestion, a topic suggestion. I'm getting tired. And just tell me what you think. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I'm praying for the country and all of you guys, and we'll talk soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, y'all cutting up in the chat. Silly girl. Claude. All right, you guys. Thank y'all for supporting the stream. I appreciate you guys. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Other presidents for give it down. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Other presidents for give it down. We got to talk about gerrymandering over the weekend. I got you guys. We'll talk about it another day. They do love Trump Zero. All right, you guys. I'm going to lay it down because I'm getting delirious. Big hugs, Lions Den. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye. Claude, we're always friends. We're still friends. You guys are cutting up.